Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Marbella Valdez. Juan was born in Tijuana, Mexico's second largest city, located in the state of Baja California. In 2020, when this case was being developed, Juan was 40 years old and owned a cleaning company. Although this was his main job, he seemed to have a true passion for the security sector. On one occasion, he interned at the forensic office of the state prosecutor's office. He is still passionate about being a law enforcement officer. Occasionally, he would even go out on the streets dressed in a police uniform. In August 2019, Juan met a 20-year-old girl named Marbella Valdez. She has a sweet and cheerful personality. She is often called Bella by her family and friends. As a child, she experienced many hardships. At the age of 5, she was sent to an orphanage. She continued to spend the following years in such facilities. According to local pastor David Lopez, who was present when the girl was admitted to the orphanage, she quickly demonstrated her kind nature and goodwill. This helped her win love and respect from the other children, as well as from the staff there. Although facing many difficulties, Marbella still feels optimistic and loves life. At the orphanage, she made friends like Brenda Valdez and Jairo Solana. Brenda became very close to her. Pastor David observed that they were often playing together and always by each other's side during various activities. They always love, help, and protect each other. Brenda took on the role of an older sister who was always there for her. Over time, Marbella started dreaming of a better future and successfully completed both primary and secondary school. She was considered a good student and actively participated in youth religious groups. She realized that progress comes from studying and working hard, so she started selling sweets to her schoolmates at the age of 16 and did extra work as a house cleaner. Fortunately, on her journey to success, Marbella had support. William Messick, an American IT executive, had been helping her and Brenda for some time. In 2014, he started a program to aid orphans from Tijuana, Mexico. His idea is to help children during the most difficult and vulnerable stages of their lives, until they are mature enough to face life on their own. Having been an orphan himself, William understood their struggles. His project included a scholarship program. After meeting Brenda, they formed a close bond, like father and daughter. Brenda told him about her friend, Marbella, from the orphanage, and soon he included Marbella in his program. In 2018, Marbella graduated from high school. She then enrolled at the Autonomous University of Baja California to pursue her dream of becoming a lawyer, with a focus on protecting children's rights. As she entered adulthood, William helped both Marbella and Brenda rent an apartment. Later, when she expressed her desire to live independently, and William once again supported her, acknowledging her maturity and sense of responsibility. During this time, she started university and also looked for a job to support herself. With William's help, she even purchased a car to commute easily between work, university, and home. Marbella started working at a gas station owned by Randy Chicas, a Mexican company that supports women. Her shift began at 5:30 a.m. and ended at noon. After lunch, she would head to the university to study law. Despite her packed schedule, but she made time for church services. It was at the gas station that she met Juan, who owned a cleaning company. One day, he stopped by to fill up the company car. He was immediately attracted by the friendliness and charm of Marbella. From then on, he made it a point to visit the station almost daily, filling up his cars and trying to strike up a conversation with Marbella. She treated him with the same courtesy and smile she gave to all her other customers. Soon, Juan started giving Marbella gifts, such as sweets, toys, and chocolate. He even brought breakfast for her and other female employees. She told William, who she thought of as her father, about Juan's actions. William warned Marbella to be careful since Juan was much older. However, she said she wasn't interested in Juan. For she, a 20-year-old girl, the attention of an older person like Juan seemed funny and even ridiculous. Her colleagues also found the situation funny. Everyone considered Juan to be a friendly and respectable person, not a threat to young girls. Marbella made it clear she wasn't interested in Juan and often turned down his invitations to meet. Juan didn't take these rejections well, and his behavior started to change. Marbella noticed that Juan would often follow her after her shift at the gas station. He seemed to always know her whereabouts and would appear, asking her to go with him. There were times when she suspected he of following her home. She mentioned this strange behavior to her colleagues. On Wednesday, February 5, 2020, Marbella failed to show up for work at the gas station and did not contact anyone to explain her absence. Marbella and her friend Brenda, although not living together, would meet up several times a week. Brenda had a young son whom Marbella adored and visited often. They would talk on the phone daily. Brenda, who worked the night shift, would usually call Marbella every morning after returning home. That Wednesday, Brenda and Marbella didn't talk as usual. Brenda woke up around 9 a.m. to find a message from Marbella saying she had a stomach ache and wouldn't be going to work. Instead, she planned to see a doctor. This message worried Brenda for two reasons: her health and the unusual manner in which the message was written. It was also strange that she didn't call. Brenda tried to reach Marbella but couldn't, so she contacted their mutual friends. However, none of them had any information about Marbella's whereabouts. The group of friends began searching for Marbella in local hospitals and medical centers, but they couldn't find her anywhere. Brenda and one of her friends decided to visit Marbella's house. They knocked on the door and rang the bell, but there was no answer. Normally, Marbella would leave a window slightly open for her friends to come and go. This time, the window was wide open. Brenda climbed in through the window and found the interior of the house looking as if Marbella had just come home from university. Her belongings, including books, clothes, bag, and car keys, were all in their usual places. However, Marbella is missing. Throughout the day, they searched various locations but found nothing. According to Brenda, they went to the police to report Marbella missing. However, because Marbella was an adult, police regulations required waiting 3 days before launching an official search. Despite this, an investigation began right away. Brenda and her friends started making flyers with Marbella's photo. Marbella was described as a young girl with brown eyes, long straight chestnut red hair, dark skin, a slim build, a height of 1.50 meters, and a weight of 45 kilograms. They posted and distributed these flyers throughout the city. At the same time, William used his network of contacts to launch a search campaign for Marbella. Along with Brenda, they even attempted to hack into Marbella's phone to determine her location, but this was unsuccessful. In the later interview, Brenda mentioned that even Juan's behavior became more suspicious. 3 days after Marbella's disappearance, on February 8, the police received a call from a man who reported finding a woman's body in a dump in the Colonia Te Colet area. This location was over 26 miles from Marbella's house in southern Tijuana and was so remote. It took the police a long time to locate this site, but they eventually arrived. Among a pile of garbage, they discovered a large black bag containing the body of a young woman. She was dressed in blue pajamas with images of black puppies and animal print slippers. The body was almost face down, with the legs tied with a yellow cord and the hands tied behind the back with a pink scarf wrapped. The body was taken to the morgue for examination, while investigators collected evidence at the scene. After finding the body, police informed Brenda that the body's characteristics matched the description of Marbella. Brenda and William immediately went to the morgue, but were told they had to wait until the next day to examine the body. Juan unexpectedly appeared and helped them gain access to the morgue. Unfortunately, they determined that the body was that of Marbella. At that time, Juan did not know that Brenda and Marbella's friends had reported him to the police, as they suspected him of stalking Marbella. The police requested permission from Marbella's family to carry out a forensic examination and conduct other investigations to collect evidence. The examination of Marbella's remains took about 5 days. Mourning began on February 13, 2020, and continued until February 14. Juan attended the wake and funeral, he wearing a T-shirt with her image. This made her friends extremely angry. Despite their anger, they remained silent, follow the instructions of the authorities so that he does not become suspicious, as they feared he might escape before sufficient evidence was collected for his arrest. At Marbella's funeral, Jose Ruiz, a close friend of hers, spotted an individual with scratches on his neck. This man behaved strangely, repeatedly approaching the coffin, threatening people with a knife, and offered to carry flowers to the cemetery in his car. Meanwhile, police are still trying their best to investigate Marbella's death. Forensic results revealed that she died from asphyxia due to severe compression of her neck, which blocked her air supply. She also suffered serious blows to the abdomen, causing damage to her internal organs. In front of the University of Baja California, Marbella's classmates held a memorial in her memory. They emphasized that she was a victim of violence by men, a serious problem taking place across Mexico. The investigation into Marbella's killing included interviews with people who knew her. Through the interviews, it was learned that a few days before she was killed, she had spoken to Juan. He said that he was a federal police officer in Baja California and worked as a specialist at the Attorney General's office. However, it was discovered that he had only interned at the Attorney General's office. Additionally, some media outlets reported that he had a criminal record and was imprisoned for offenses related to illegal substances in the state of Sonora. The results of a search of Marbella's car were even more troubling, as experts found a hidden geolocation device. Later, a search of Juan's house uncovered several similar devices and satellite detection receivers. This explains why he always knows where she is. However, the most compelling evidence came from a forensic examination of the body, which revealed fingerprints and semen. DNA analysis confirmed that these matched the genetic sample taken from Juan when he was brought in for questioning. An analysis of Marbella's mobile phone showed that her phone and Juan's were always in the same locations during her disappearance. This shows that he used her phone to send messages to her friends. A few days after the funeral, Juan was charged with the murder of Marbella, and on February 22, 2020, he appeared in court for the first time. During this hearing, it was revealed that after her disappearance, he contacted the state attorney general's office several times to ask about the investigation's progress. He also expressed his wish that the person responsible for Marbella's death would not be punished. The authorities stated that Juan had always been the main suspect in the case, due to previous reported incidents of harassment. It was said that he was obsessed with Marbella, even though he had known her for only 5 months. Since then, he had been under police surveillance. According to the investigation, he allegedly entered her house and kidnapped her. The incident occurred between February 5 and 8 in the Sai Kotlef Aliman neighborhood, where Juan lived. There he kept she, exerting physical and sexual violence, which caused injuries to her face, stomach, and genitals, ultimately leading to her death. The conclusion in the case was that Marbella died of lack of oxygen, caused by compression of the neck, which blocked the airway and blood vessels. She also sustained severe bruising to her abdomen, causing damage to internal organs. Juan's DNA matched semen found in Marbella's body, and a considerable amount of tissue was found under her fingernails, indicating a struggle. During the hearing, mobile phone tracking data revealed that Juan and Marbella's phones were together starting from the morning of February 5. The body was discovered at Marbella's home. Another important clue is that their phones were also together on February 2nd. This was also the day Marbella reported her house and car keys missing. On February 27th, at a hearing in the Superior Court of Tijuana, Judge Daniel Aguilar Patina concluded there is enough evidence to accuse Juan of killing Marbella. The judge highlighted that Juan deliberately misled everyone about Marbella's whereabouts, pretending to be worried in front of her family and at the gas station while he actually knew what was going on. He was temporarily detained in MIAs, but maintained his innocence regarding. His trial occurred from September 14 to 29, 2022. Over 2 years after the incident, forensic evidence and testimony from people close to Marbella were presented. It was discovered that on the morning Marbella went missing, a colleague had called her, noting that she had not been to the gas station. She only managed to say she was unwell before the connection was broken. Her friends described her as a wonderful person and identified Juan as a harasser. She never believed she was in danger, so she didn't file an official complaint against Juan, she thinking he would lose interest after her repeated rejections. Other witnesses mentioned that he often pretended to be a law enforcement officer, but he was just an intern at the University of Justice. After reviewing all the evidence and listening to the testimonies, Judge Marta Elvia Luna Vargas declared that Juan committed the horrendous crime, he that took Marbella's life. She then sentenced Juan to 42 years and 6 months in prison for the murder of Marbella Valdez. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Tara Lynn Grant. Tara Lynn Grant was born on June 22, 1972 in Michigan. She grew up on a farm with her parents and older sister. During her childhood, Tara enjoyed doing outdoor activities such as horseback riding and helping her family take care of farm animals. She was also very active in school sports, cheerleading, playing basketball and playing music in the school band. After completing high school, Tara decided to attend the University of Michigan. It was here that she met her boyfriend Steven and married him after graduating. Tara, after graduating, got a good job at a large international company. Meanwhile, Steven had been involved in politics as an assistant to a state senator. However, when the senator retired, Steven lost his job. Therefore, he decided to work at his father's small tool shop. After 4 years of marriage, Tara and Steven had a daughter, followed by a son a few years later. When their second child was born, they bought a new home in Malm County, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. Tara was successful in her career, but due to the nature of her work, she often traveled to different states and countries, leaving her with only weekends to spend with her family. As a result, Steven had to take on most of the responsibility for the children. His father's store job and the children's care were difficult for him. So they decided to hire a full-time nanny to help ease the burden. After a short time, they found the right person. They hired a young German woman who quickly bonded with their children and took on most of the childcare. Because of her work, Tara only came home on weekends, which led to more frequent arguments between them. Tara expected that after her next promotion, she would be able to adjust her schedule to spend more time at home with her family, but when she was promoted, she traveled for work almost every day. This continued until February 14, 2007, when something unexpected happened. On Valentine's Day, Steven reported to the police that Tara had been out of contact for 5 days. This was unusual because Tara was in constant contact with her family, especially when children were involved. Steven recounted the incident as follows. On the evening of February 9th, Tara returned home from a business trip and said she had to leave earlier than expected, staying home for only 1 day. This led to an argument, and Tara began packing her things. As she left the house, she told the driver of a dark-colored car, "I'll be waiting down the street." From then on, Tara was out of contact and did not return any calls. The police wondered why Stephen waited 5 days to report the incident. Stephen explained that he was not worried at first because he thought Tara had just left for work early as planned and had not contacted her because they had just had an argument. However, he became concerned when Tara did not contact her family for an extended period of time. Normally, when she was on a business trip, she would call her 2 young children, but this time she did not contact them. Furthermore, Tara's boss called Stephen on Monday to say that she had not shown up for a meeting. This made him even more worried, and he was sure that Tara was missing. Stephen called Tara's parents and told them about her lack of contact with home. However, the parents thought that Tara just needed time off after an argument with Stephen. Previously, Tara had told her parents that her relationship with Stephen was having difficulties due to work, and they argued frequently. Therefore, her relatives thought that Tara just wanted to temporarily leave and would return home when she had stabilized. As time passed and Tara still did not appear, and she did not answer any calls, Stephen began to worry about her safety. He decided to contact the police for help. During the interrogation, the police noticed some suspicious scratches on Stephen. They asked if the scratches were related to the argument with Tara. But Stephen denied it. He explained that he often got injured while working at his father's store. After the interview, the police said they needed to search Stephen's home, and he agreed. When they arrived, the police discovered that all of Tara's belongings were missing from the home, including her papers and wallet, along with her suitcase. Stephen also gave them access to Tara's personal computer. The police checked it and found that there had been no bank transactions in the days after she disappeared. The police were surprised because Tara would have needed to pay for expenses if she had gone somewhere, such as buying a plane ticket or booking a hotel room. During the search of the home, the police found no signs of Tara's whereabouts after she disappeared. There was no evidence or clues. Therefore, the police decided to focus on determining what she had been doing and where she had been on February 9th. The area they live in is considered one of the safest in the country, and the local police department has little experience investigating similar disappearances. The police ask Stephen to take a lie detector test, but he refuses. Stephen insists that he would never harm his wife and becomes very emotional. The police then leave his home and consider their next steps. However, the next morning, Stephen contacts the police again and says he is willing to cooperate. However, a short time later, Stephen's lawyer contacts the police and says he has advised his agent not to cooperate with the police. Other than following the usual practice in such cases, they are unable to find any other leads. During the investigation, Tara's family, friends, and colleagues said they had not heard from her since February 9th and did not know where she might be. Additionally, her bank account had not recorded any significant transactions, although she needed to make some basic purchases. Police began to question Stephen and discovered that his driver's license had been revoked. However, Stephen continued to drive despite the ban. Police used this to arrest Stephen for driving without a license. After his arrest, Stephen claimed that the police were considering him a prime suspect in his wife's disappearance and refused to answer any questions. With the assistance of his lawyer, Stephen was released on bail and returned home. Police continued to investigate and requested Tara's cell phone records to gather more evidence. On the day Tara went missing, she made one last call. It was from the airport, in which she told Stephen that she would be home soon. Stephen then called her repeatedly, but all the calls went to voicemail. The police listened to these recordings and found that Stephen asked Tara to answer or call back. He claimed that Tara did not care about the children and asked her to come home for the children. However, Tara's cell phone was turned off and was last connected to a cell tower near her home on the evening of her disappearance. It is worth noting that the police did not find any incoming calls to Tara at that time, although Stephen said that someone had called her before she left the house and said that the person would be waiting for her on the street. Stephen was really worried about his wife and at the same time angry at Tara's actions of abandoning their children. Although the police were investigating him, they could not find any new traces. Stephen still refused to cooperate with the police, accusing them of wasting time suspecting him instead of looking for Tara. During this time, Stephen actively appeared in the media. Tara's mysterious disappearance attracted a lot of attention from many people, and in front of the camera, Stephen begged her to return home safely. When the company that Stephen and Tara hired the nanny learned about the case, they decided to send the nanny back to Germany. Before leaving, the nanny reported to the police about her working hours at their house. The nanny said that on the evening Tara came home, she went to a bar with her friends. When the nanny returned home, she met Stephen, who seemed sad and said that Tara had just left home. Although Stephen refused to cooperate with the police, he hired a private investigator, a former FBI agent, to investigate the case. However, this investigator also failed to find Tara. The police decided to change their approach and contacted the nanny agency that employed Tara and Stephen. They discovered an important piece of information. Before hiring the German nanny, they had a total of 6 other nannies, but none of them had worked there long term. Police interviewed the nannies, most of whom said Stephen behaved strangely and unnervingly. They said he would rummage through their belongings, ask personal questions, and verbally abuse them. The police began investigating why the last nanny from Germany had a completely different description of her time with the family. They had only heard good things about Stephen. To clarify the matter, the police monitored the nanny's emails and phone calls. This led to an unexpected piece of information. The police discovered text messages between her and Stephen, which showed that they had been in a relationship. It was learned that the 19-year-old had been having an affair with him during Tara's business trips and that the relationship continued until she quit her job and had to leave the country. Although this was an important clue, the police could not yet conclude that Stephen was involved in Tara's disappearance. Therefore, they continued to look for other evidence. During the investigation, the police talked to Tara's relatives and friends and found that most of them did not like Stephen because of his strange behavior. They believed that Stephen wanted to control Tara's every move and often caused conflicts with her family. The police also found another important piece of information. Stephen's ex-girlfriend, whom he had dated before meeting Tara, contacted the police and revealed something surprising. According to her, Stephen contacted her again a few months ago, and their conversations gradually became intimate. Eventually, Stephen expressed his desire to start a romantic relationship with her, even though they were both married to other people. Stephen also complained about Tara and her frequent absences. He suspected that she was cheating on him with her boss. To verify this, he installed tracking software on her computer, allowing him to read her messages, but he found no evidence of Tara's infidelity. This information made the police even more suspicious of her husband's involvement in Tara's disappearance. However, the police still needed more evidence. Since it had been several weeks since Tara went missing, they began to consider the possibility that she was no longer alive and began an extensive search for her body. Police, along with volunteers, began searching the area around Tara's house and a large park nearby for several miles. However, the search lasted for several days and still yielded no results. But everything changed on February 28th. A woman walking in the park discovered something strange under a tree along the path. A plastic bag was covered with branches and snow, but it was clear that there was still something inside. Therefore, she decided to examine the bag closely. When she looked into the bag, she discovered rubber gloves and metal fragments along with a dark red substance at the bottom of the bag. She called the police to report the incident, and she decided to keep the bag and turn it in to the police. Police suspected the dark red substance could be blood, so they sent the bag to a lab for testing. However, due to the large workload, experts said the DNA analysis could take up to 2 months. In the meantime, experts have tested the bag and confirmed that the dark red substance is indeed human blood. The police focused all their efforts on the area where the bag was found, mobilizing all resources to investigate. Meanwhile, Stephen did not participate in the search. Instead, Stephen spent his time giving an interview to a news channel, giving many suspicious answers. Stephen repeatedly criticized Tara for being away from home so often. He called her a bad mother and claimed that he shouldered most of the responsibility for taking care of the children. When the reporter asked about their financial situation and whether he was living off Tara's money, Stephen became angry. He insisted that he did not need a single penny from Tara. During the interview, Stephen accused Tara of having an affair but did not provide any evidence. He repeatedly criticized Tara. The police obtained a search warrant for Tara and Stephen's home. The police arrived at Stephen's home. At the same time, Stephen returned from an interview with a reporter. The police informed him of the search warrant for his home. Stephen opened the door for them and then called his lawyer. The lawyer asked the police if Stephen was under arrest. The police replied that he was not. Stephen then said that he was going to walk his dog and left. During that time, the police searched each room in the house. They eventually arrived at the garage and found a large green bin containing several plastic bags. When they opened one of the plastic bags, they found an unknown substance and women's clothing. When the police opened the other bag, they discovered that it contained human remains. After examining a total of 5 bags in the bin, the police quickly confirmed that they contained the remains of a woman. Police believed they had found Tara's body and suspected Stephen of being her killer. However, Stephen did not appear, so the police immediately launched a search for him to prevent him from fleeing or causing harm to others. Meanwhile, the police requested reinforcements to search the park for Tara's remains as more remains were still missing from the garage. Over 100 police officers from neighboring counties were called in to assist in the search, and their efforts soon paid off. A few hundred meters from where the bag was found, the police found another body part. Then they found the head. Due to the cold weather, the rest of the body was quite well preserved, helping the police confirm that it was Tara. The police continued to search and found some more body parts. However, in the evening, the search had to be stopped until the next morning. During this time, the police also tried to locate Stephen but were unsuccessful. They contacted his friends, and one of them revealed that Stephen had called him, informing him that the police were searching at Stephen's house and asking to pick him up on the way. Stephen's friend came to pick him up and took him home. On the way, he noticed that Stephen's behavior was very strange. He seemed scared, his hands were shaking, and he seemed very depressed. When Stephen arrived at his friend's house, Stephen said he wanted to see his children and borrowed a car from his friend. However, Stephen's children were at his sister's house in another state at the time. The friend agreed to lend him the pickup truck, and Stephen left. In order to track Stephen, the police requested his phone and credit card information. This helped them quickly determine Stephen's travel route. By monitoring his withdrawals and calls to his sister, the police realized that Stephen was on his way to see his children. Realizing this, the police immediately set out to track him. An unexpected event occurred. The police received a call from a German woman with whom Stephen had a relationship. The woman said that Stephen had just contacted her and confessed to killing his wife, Tara. According to him, they had argued that night and he became violent after Tara slapped him. In a fit of rage, Stephen pushed Tara and she fell to the floor, resulting in her death from head injuries. After this confession, the police no longer had any doubts about Stephen's guilt. However, they still needed to catch him. For hours, they searched the area along the highway leading to the neighboring state. They eventually found Stephen's car near the entrance to the national park, but he himself was nowhere to be found. The police searched the area, and after several hours of searching, they found Stephen using a thermal imaging camera. He was lying under a tree, wearing light clothing and in a dangerous state of hypothermia. The officers noticed that he was suffering from an unusual condition, often talking to trees and mumbling incomprehensible sentences. Fearing that he was in danger, the officers quickly airlifted him to the hospital. At that time, his body temperature was only 88 degrees Fahrenheit, but doctors were able to save him. However, he needed time to fully recover. While Stephen was in the hospital, he was charged with murder and the case was transferred to court. Interestingly, on the same day, Stephen's attorney refused to defend him. When asked why, Stephen's attorney gave a vague answer. A new attorney was then appointed for Stephen. Meanwhile, forensic pathologists began investigating Tara's remains. One of the most experienced pathologists in the country, who had worked on such high-profile cases as the JFK case and the JonBenet Ramsey case, was appointed as the chief medical examiner. After examining Tara's remains, the chief medical examiner concluded that Stephen's story did not match the facts. According to Stephen, Tara died of head trauma, but the investigation actually showed that Tara's cause of death was strangulation. When Stephen recovered, the police came to the hospital to see him and he told them what happened that night. The incident started when Tara returned and said she had to leave a day early. This led to a heated argument between the two. In a fit of rage, Stephen attacked Tara. She tried to leave, but he held her back. Tara defended herself by punching Stephen in the face, which angered him and he attacked her. The incident escalated when Stephen yelled at and strangled Tara. He then dragged her body down the second floor to the garage and put her in the trunk of his car. Meanwhile, the nanny returned home. To cover up his crime, Stephen told her that Tara had left him. The next day, he took the body to his father's workshop while making sure no one else was there. To cover his tracks, Stephen destroyed all of Tara's documents and personal belongings, then used a saw to cut her body into pieces. A few hours later, he packed the remains into plastic bags, placed them in a container, and returned home, leaving the body in his car for several days. He pondered how to dispose of the remains while creating an alibi for himself. He repeatedly called Tara and left messages on her voicemail, begging her to come home. Stephen took his son's sled and went to the park. There, he placed the container containing Tara's remains on the sled and began pulling it up a hill to avoid the crowded area. However, the rope he was pulling the sled with was not secure, and it slipped out of his hands. The sled began to roll down, the container tipped over, and the bags containing the remains spilled out. After picking up the bags, Stephen put the container back on the sled, and after a while, he found a remote place to bury the bags under the snow. He then left the park. A few days after he left, the police began looking for Tara, and the detectives announced that they would begin a search in the area of the park where Stephen had buried the bags. Stephen became panicked, remembering that the largest bag had been poorly hidden and could soon be discovered. To avoid this, he decided to move the bags to a safer place. Stephen went to the park, picked up a few bags, shouldered them, and carried them to his father's workshop, placing them on the roof. The next day, before going to the interview, he took the box from home, went to the workshop to carry the bags back to his garage. However, the next day, the police obtained a search warrant for the house. There, they found the bags in the box. When the situation became clear, Stephen confessed that he had not originally planned to surrender. During his conversation with the police, Stephen showed no remorse for his crimes. Instead, he often smiled and joked even as he described the process of hiding and disposing of the body. While Stephen awaited trial in prison, his children continued to live with his sister. This did not please Tara's family. Despite this, Stephen's sister continued to keep in touch with him, even feeling sorry for him and responding to jokes about Tara's murder. Tara's family eventually won custody of the children, but Stephen's family was still allowed to see them. In November 2007, Stephen's trial began. However, he did not deny his guilt. His new attorney then tried to get Stephen to get a reduced sentence. The attorney explained that Stephen and Tara's troubled marriage and Tara's frequent absences were the main reasons for Stephen's crime. During the trial, Stephen had lied about Tara's plans to come home a day earlier. Tara's sister, who had spoken to her before the murder, also confirmed this information. During that conversation, Tara told her sister that she would be home soon after that, as she did every week. There was no evidence that Tara had lied to her husband. Tara's boss said that Tara's relationship with the man was purely business, which was confirmed by their emails and text messages. The prosecution failed to prove that Stephen had planned the murder in advance. He had clearly committed the crime in a fit of rage, which could have resulted in a second-degree murder charge instead of a first-degree one. On December 21, 2007, the jury unanimously found Stephen guilty and he was sentenced to a minimum of 50 years in prison. Stephen's attorney attempted to appeal the verdict, but to no avail. He has since served time behind bars. But his story didn't end there. Tara's murder captured the attention of millions across the country, and Stephen clearly enjoyed it. While in prison, he began writing a book and begged to have it published with the help of his sister. They even discussed the possibility of turning it into a movie, and Stephen considered which famous actor could play him. In 2008, something else came to light. Stephen's children told their aunt that they had actually seen their father kill their mother that evening. They came out of the room after hearing screams and witnessed the whole thing. When this information appeared in the media, Stephen's relatives accused the children of lying and continued to protect him. That same year, it was revealed that Stephen's father, unlike other relatives, did not support him, could not live with what his son had done, and Stephen's father's body was found in his home. To this day, Stephen remains behind bars and will only be eligible for parole in 2058. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Sabrina Kudder. Sabrina Kudder was born on December 5, 1982, in a suburb of London. She is of French and Algerian descent from her parents. The combination leads to her exceptionalism. The eldest of 4 children, her family moved to Paris when she was 2 years old, and she grew up there. However, Sabrina's complex personality began to emerge when she went to school. Her former classmates described her as fierce, domineering, self-centered. Sabrina does not make friends easily, and she is especially unfriendly to other smart and beautiful girls, as she sees them as competitors. With her beautiful looks and outstanding height, Sabrina could have pursued a modeling career if she had learned to be friendly with others. However, during her childhood and youth, she often wanted to use others instead of caring about their interests. Sabrina participated in sports and music as a child, but she did not strive and did not achieve success in these areas. While studying at school, Sabrina participated in sports and injured her back. Since then, she had to use prescription painkillers. However, she later tried to obtain painkillers illegally, which led to her arrest and warning. Sabrina focused a lot on herself and her appearance, always craving for attention. She believed that she would have a rich, glamorous, and famous future. For a long time, Sabrina's fantasies had kept her from reality. She believed that her rightful place was in Hollywood. Although Sabrina graduated from the Sorbonne with a degree in English and French literature, since 2006 she has changed careers several times in the fashion industry. She has worked as a stylist, makeup artist, and fashion designer, although she has no real expertise in these fields. Sabrina is a young girl with a charming appearance and a hobby of attracting men. However, she only takes advantage of their feelings, never being serious with them. Instead, she is waiting for the perfect man, a prince, who will fulfill everything she wants. After graduating, Sabrina has not yet determined her life goals. She feels entitled to enjoy life without having to make an effort. However, she enrolls in the prestigious Sorbonne University and works part-time at a sweet shop to earn money. At the sweet shop, Sabrina meets Wissam Maduni, a man 6 years older than her. Wissam is a manager at the headquarters of a large French company and is studying at a prestigious university. He aspires to get a master's degree to advance in his career. Wissam loves Sabrina very much and is willing to fulfill all her wishes. Sabrina also found Wissam attractive and saw him as someone she could control. Besides, she also saw Wissam as a ticket to a wealthy life. He was ambitious and had the potential to be very successful in his career, willing to pamper and please Sabrina. The couple began their relationship in 2000 and after a few months decided to move in together. However, Sabrina quickly revealed her true nature by controlling Wissam in every aspect of his life. If Wissam did not meet her demands, she would get angry and even beat Wissam. Sabrina also openly cheated on Wissam without hiding or justifying her actions. She had feelings for many people, including Wissam's close friends, colleagues, and random acquaintances. Although Wissam tried to end the relationship and leave her many times, he could not escape his deep love for Sabrina. In 2001, Wissam earned a master's degree and was promoted, earning him a substantial income. However, Wissam spent the money on luxury goods and entertaining Sabrina. Wissam and Sabrina were compatriots of French-Algerian origin. According to some reports, in the fall of 2001, the couple held a special Muslim ceremony to marry, which was certified by it issued by the Argento Mosque. The couple had a son, but years later, another man named Anthony Francois claimed to be the father of the child. In 2008, the global financial crisis hit hard, causing the company where Wissam worked to go bankrupt and he lost his high-paying job. At this time, Sabrina decided to move to London without discussing it with Wissam. Wissam no longer had any opportunities or hopes for a career here, so he decided to follow Sabrina to London. Upon arriving in London, Wissam found a job at a large bank. However, Sabrina had difficulty finding opportunities in the fashion industry, as she did not have enough skills, experience, and formal education in this field. After that, Sabrina tried many different jobs to find new opportunities. She worked as a nanny, a call center operator, a cafe worker, and even tried her hand at marketing. Sabrina's career journey turned to musician and composer. Despite her best efforts, Sabrina still had difficulty finding opportunities in the music industry. She participated in many auditions and social events to make connections. At one of these events, Sabrina met Mark Walton, a famous musician and composer, who was a member of the famous boy band Boyzone. After leaving the band, Mark became a successful music producer and collaborated with many famous artists such as Jennifer Lopez, Jessica Simpson, and Lady Gaga. In 2016, Mark's net worth exceeded $1 billion. Mark was exactly the person who helped Sabrina enter the world of fame and luxury. She impressed Mark with her beauty and charm. He also had to admit that he fell in love with her at first sight. Their relationship progressed quickly. Sabrina quickly ended her relationship with Wissam. Nothing stands in Sabrina's way. Within weeks, she moved in with Mark in a luxurious house in an upscale area of London. Mark paid all the bills, including rent, for the lavish house Sabrina chose. For months, Sabrina enjoyed the lavish lifestyle she had long desired, socializing with celebrities, attending high society events, wearing high-fashion clothes, and even appearing in magazines. However, when Sabrina became jealous of every woman around Mark and could not control her behavior, Sabrina's true colors began to show. Sabrina became increasingly demanding of extravagant gifts. Mark pampered her with designer clothes. jewelry, and trips to upscale restaurants and clubs, but that wasn't enough for her. The couple's home constantly changed maids, as Sabrina's paranoia led her to believe they were stealing or trying to seduce Mark. Her irrational behavior became too much for Mark to handle. In 2011, he ended the relationship and moved to California, leaving Sabrina penniless. After breaking up with Mark, Sabrina began giving interviews and accusing Mark of being severely abusive and having a habit of substance abuse. She called Mark constantly, crying and begging him to come back. She even threatened suicide, but he did not change his mind. After realizing that she couldn't win Mark back, Sabrina contacted Wissam, who was now a bank executive. He still loved Sabrina and was willing to forgive her after a period of separation. They reunited and continued living together. When Sabrina became pregnant with Wissam's child, she again informed Mark and claimed that the pregnancy was his. Mark, through his lawyer, expressed his desire to support Sabrina and the unborn child. He offered to pay the monthly child support. However, Sabrina did not agree to the amount of monthly child support that Mark paid. Sabrina wanted to double the child support and Mark did not agree. Mark wanted a paternity test after the child was born. Because Sabrina refused to take a paternity test, Mark did not change the child support. Sabrina sued him. Sabrina made false statements on social media and accused Mark of jealous behavior, threatening her and Wissam, accusing him of breaking into their home, attacking Wissam, and sexually assaulting her in unacceptable ways. However, Sabrina could not prove any of her claims because Mark had been in the United States since their separation, which proved he was not present at the scene. When Mark filed a lawsuit and the police threatened to take action against her, Sabrina stopped making those accusations. After the conflict seemed to have been resolved, she spent a lot of time in Wimbledon, southwest London, with Wissam and her 2 children. Sabrina's life was difficult with the housework and the care of 2 children, so Sabrina decided to hire a nanny to help with the housework. She posted a job ad online and personally conducted the interviews. Most of the candidates did not meet her requirements, and those who did meet her expectations did not stay long in her family. A young French woman named Sophie Lyonnette answered an advertisement for a babysitter. At the time, Sophie was 19 and was back in her home country of France, so the interview was conducted via video call. Sophie agreed to all the terms. Childcare, housekeeping and cooking for a weekly wage of £50. Sophie was born on January 7, 1996, in the small town of Troyes, between Auxerre and Senators. Her parents, Catherine and Patrick Leon, were laborers, and the family was in dire financial straits. After graduating, Sophie received a degree in childcare, but had no intention of settling down in her hometown. Instead, she longed to move to a big city to develop her career. Although Sophie was quiet, unsociable, and had a plain appearance, she was very kind and open-minded, which made her loved by those who knew her. Sophie's eyesight was poor, forcing her to wear glasses all day. During a conversation, Sabrina quickly realized that Sophie was a simple and inexperienced person, which made Sophie the perfect target for Sabrina to take advantage of. Moreover, Sophie was eager to gain experience, so she was willing to work for minimum wage. Sophie, having told her parents that Sabrina was a serious and trustworthy employer, thought that working for Sabrina's family would be a good start to her nanny career. At first, everything seemed to go smoothly. She took care of the children, did the housework responsibly. This peaceful period lasted for a few months and there seemed to be no serious problems. However, things began to change when Wissam lost his job. At that time, Sabrina's family only had the monthly child support from Mark as their main source of income. So the family faced serious financial difficulties, high rent and basic living expenses. Sabrina, not wanting to give up her luxurious lifestyle, became irritable and aggressive. She often took her anger out on Sophie, the young nanny. Sabrina and Wissam entered a bakery business with the last of their money, but the venture failed. Sabrina then opened a clothing store but did not have enough funds. She asked Mark for a large sum of money, but was flatly refused, leaving her disappointed. What happened next depends on the source. There are different versions of the story. Some sources claim that Sabrina came up with a plan to use Sophie as a weapon to blackmail Mark. She thought of having Sophie as Mark's accomplice and lover, supposedly planted in Sabrina's home to ruin their lives and endanger the children. Sabrina claimed that the provincial idiot Sophie was in love with Mark. She thought that simply recording Sophie's confession on tape or video and presenting it to the police would be enough evidence to demand compensation from Mark for his cruel actions. However, Sophie refused to lie on camera. Another version, due to her mental disorder, claims that Sabrina actually believed in her conspiracy theory and saw Sophie as an enemy and a threat to her family. She allegedly did not force the nanny to lie but truly believed that Sophie was Mark's accomplice who had infiltrated their family to harm them. Whatever the truth, Sophie's life soon became a living nightmare. Sophie first faced long hours of overwork and inadequate pay. She ended up working from dawn to dusk, with no time for herself, effectively imprisoned within the walls of the house. Next, her pay was cut off completely. To prevent her from escaping or returning to France, Sabrina took her passport, effectively making her a captive. All her contact with her family was tightly controlled. The situation got worse. Sophie was barely fed and was constantly forced to lie about Mark, whom she had never met or known. Sophie was insulted and threatened, accused of stealing money and valuables. She was threatened with imprisonment if she did not comply with Sabrina's demands. When threats no longer worked, Sabrina resorted to more brutal and sophisticated methods. Sophie was moved to a cold basement, fed only meager food. She became thin and weak, however, the cold and hunger were not the worst. She suffered physical abuse, subjected to the most painful torture. Sabrina broke Sophie's nose in a violent outburst. This division made the story clearer and easier to understand, and made the reader feel more comfortable. However, Sabrina's cruelty continued to increase, causing Sophie to suffer daily torture. The basement of the house, located in an affluent area of London, became a place of torture for Sophie, where she had no hope of being rescued. A strange event occurred in the late summer of 2017, when Sabrina took Sophie to the police to say that Sophie was ready to testify against Mark. However, Sophie remained silent. When the police decided to talk to Sophie privately, they took her to a separate apartment. At this point, Sabrina was extremely worried, afraid that Sophie would reveal the horrors that were happening at their home, which would implicate her and her husband. Mysteriously, Sophie chose not to reveal anything or seek help. The police response was also strange. Despite seeing a young woman who was malnourished, frightened and weak, they did not call a doctor or psychologist to ensure her health and safety. At the time, 21-year-old Sophie weighed less than 40 kilograms, had lost some of her hair, was missing a front tooth and was walking with a noticeable limp. However, none of this worried the police, who simply sent everyone home. By mid-September, Sophie made her final phone call to her mother. She confessed to her that she wanted to return home but did not have enough money. Sophie's mother, Catherine, only telling her that she would buy her a ticket and asking her to pack her things immediately. This was the last time Sophie spoke to her mother. On the evening of September 20th, 2017, something unexpected happened at Sabrina's house. A neighbor called the police about a fire in the yard, but what worried them was not the fire, but an unpleasant smell coming from the fire. The smell was similar to that of burnt flesh and hair, combined with something that could not be identified. This stench spread through the air and stuck to the clothes and skin of everyone around. When the firefighters and police arrived at the scene, they put out the fire. However, the homeowner appeared calm and did not know why the police and fire service had visited their home. The police saw what looked like a charred human hand in the ashes. Sabrina and Wissam were immediately arrested and the badly burned remains were removed from the fire. The sex and age of the deceased were unknown, but the body was soon identified as Sophie Lionnet, identified by the melted metal frame embedded in her skull that Sophie always wore. Determining Sophie's cause of death was difficult. Forensic experts found severe injuries to her body, including multiple broken ribs, a broken jaw, and signs of blunt force trauma to her skull and limbs. This suggests that she suffered these injuries while she was alive. Additionally, some of her teeth were missing and her nose was severely damaged, suggesting that she had been severely beaten. The discovery of horrifying videos of abuse inside the house exposed the brutal nature of Sophie's kidnappers. She had been violently attacked in a variety of ways, including with fists, iron wires, golf clubs, and electric shocks. She had also endured humiliation, including being forced to hold her head in a toilet bowl until she suffocated. Experts believe that Sophie may have died of asphyxiation just before being burned at the stake, which would have spared her the terrible pain of being alive while being burned. During the trial, both Sabrina and Wissam denied guilt and showed no remorse for their brutal actions. After the murder, Wissam went to a nearby supermarket to buy fuel to burn the body and cooked dinner for his family, as if the murder had never happened. The couple's first trial began in March 2018. Sabrina attempted to portray herself as the victim, blaming Mark for driving her into a pathological state with his relentless torture. However, medical tests showed that although Sabrina suffered from a mental disorder, she was not insane and fully understood her actions. Wissam was psychologically dependent on Sabrina despite his physical strength. She had a great influence over him and he would blindly listen to her every word. A former lover of Sabrina spoke out during the trial, describing her as a cunning manipulator rather than a crazy woman. On June 26, 2018, the court found Sabrina Kuder and Wissam Maduni guilty of torturing, insulting, and murdering nanny Sophie. The couple were sentenced to life in prison and must serve at least 30 years before being paroled. However, neither of them pleaded guilty. They repeatedly appealed for a lighter sentence. Sabrina even tried to pretend to be insane for a while to be transferred to a hospital instead of prison. But this plan failed. Mark Walton, who attended the trial, expressed remorse for his past relationship with Sabrina. He said she committed all these barbaric crimes to attract attention and make money from him. Mark sends his deepest condolences to Sophie's parents. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ryan Widmer. Sarah and Ryan Widmer met at a favorite coffee shop. Ryan ordered a cup of coffee while Sarah was waiting in line and happened to see a book on his table that she had just finished reading. Their shared interest in literature opened up their first conversation. Gradually, they spent many hours discussing common topics such as books, movies, music, and daily routines. Through the conversation, they discovered that they both loved nature, travel, and animals. After each meeting, their relationship became closer and more trusting of each other. Their understanding and trust grew more and more. Finally, their relationship developed into love. After a few months of dating, Ryan proposed to Sarah at a romantic sunset at the same coffee shop where they met. Sarah felt very happy and agreed to the proposal. The young couple planned their wedding and found a two-story house in Hamilton. Finally, on April 10, 2008, their wedding took place. They chose a small church to hold the wedding ceremony, with the participation of close friends and beloved family. Everything, even the smallest details, was planned by Sarah in a special way. On the important day, Sarah looked gorgeous and beautiful, and Ryan couldn't take his eyes off her. After the wedding and the party, the couple decided to go on a honeymoon to the Hawaiian Islands, where they spent 2 weeks exploring the beautiful paradise and enjoying time together. At this time, they were deeply in love and had already planned for the future, dreaming of having children. On the evening of Monday, August 11, 2008, after finishing work at the dental clinic, Sarah met Ryan at a cafe. They had dinner and talked happily. After that, they walked home. Sarah packed her groceries and sat down on the couch. Ryan brought her a glass of water and a headache pill. He gave her a bath, and they finished watching their favorite TV show together. Sarah went upstairs to the bedroom. She undressed, folded her clothes neatly, prepared a towel, lit a scented candle, and turned on her favorite music. Ryan pressed the button on the TV remote, pausing a few times on the football game. He lay on the couch for no more than 10 minutes. He called his wife, but Sarah didn't hear him, so he slowly went upstairs. In the bedroom, Ryan turned on the TV and called Sarah again. There was silence. In a panic, he went into the bathroom, where he found Sarah lying face down in the bathtub. Ryan unplugged the bathtub and took out his phone to call 911. At 10:49 p.m., under the direction of the police, Ryan finally got Sarah out of the bathtub and performed CPR on her. Within 6 minutes, an ambulance and police were at Ryan's home. An initial inspection of the scene caught the attention of the police. The bathroom was dry and clean, with no signs of water or scattered objects. Sarah was lying on the bedroom floor, naked, her skin dry. Only her wet hair suggested she had drowned. A paramedic performed CPR when there was no pulse. A pinkish-white fluid flowed from Sarah's nose and mouth. 2 attempts to intubate Sarah while she was lying on the bedroom floor were unsuccessful. Sarah was then rushed to the emergency room and 2 more attempts were made to bring her heart rate back to normal with a defibrillator, both unsuccessful. During this time, Ryan remained by his wife's side. Within 20 minutes of arriving at the hospital, they attempted to revive Sarah, but at 11:41 p.m., an emergency room doctor pronounced her dead. Ryan knelt in the hospital hallway and cried. Relatives and friends of the couple could not have imagined that just 4 months after their wedding, a tragedy would strike that would shock the entire city and make Ryan the prime suspect in Sarah's death. When the police questioned him at the hospital, Ryan's initial statements raised suspicions. Ryan claimed that he and his wife had been home that night. They had dined out, returned home, and watched TV. Then, because his wife had a headache, Ryan gave her painkillers and led her to the bathroom. Some details in Ryan's statement did not match the emergency call records. The victim had collapsed face down, while Ryan said his wife was lying face up. This discrepancy made the police question Ryan's statement. Ryan was deeply shocked by what had happened. He kept calling Sarah's name. Under pressure from the police, Ryan was forced to participate in the investigation to find out information about Sarah's death. He agreed to allow his house to be searched. Analysis of the medication Sarah had taken showed that it was a common painkiller commonly used to treat headaches and migraines. However, she had been taking a course of medication that altered her hormones and caused her to fall into an uncontrollable sleep. After searching the house, traces of blood were found on the carpet. During the investigation, the police discovered several signs that made them suspicious of Ryan's story. When they arrived at the scene, the bathtub and tiles were dry with no signs of water. No wet items, clothing, or other items were found in the house that could have soaked up the water. The autopsy revealed that Sarah had several injuries to her body, including bruises to her head, neck, armpits, and lips. However, there were no signs of a struggle or resistance. Sarah's fingernails were intact, not broken or chipped. This does not fit the theory that Sarah was murdered after a struggle. Sarah's autopsy, conducted by Dr. Russell Appointment Grove, showed that she died of drowning. During the autopsy, experts also discovered multiple muscle hemorrhages in the front of her neck and bruises on her head. These injuries were determined to have occurred before her death. However, the cause of these injuries is still unknown. Toxicology tests ruled out the presence of illegal substances or alcohol in Sarah's blood. This makes the question of what caused her death even more difficult to answer. On August 13, 2008, Ryan was arrested on suspicion of murdering his wife. The charge was based on the emergency call, a scene that did not match the reality, and the injuries on Sarah's body. This was enough to charge him with murdering his wife. Ryan and Sarah were very much in love, as friends and neighbors confirmed. They never argued or fought in public and always planned their lives. What caused Sarah's death? In March 2009, the first trial began with emergency line officer Ron Cronenberger taking the stand. He described the phone conversation with Ryan as calm and relaxed. However, Ron Cronenberger also said that Ryan appeared to be just blowing into the tube, pretending to perform CPR. The prosecution argued that the information from the 911 call, the scene, and Sarah's injuries were enough to prove that Ryan killed her by forcing her underwater and drowning her in the bathtub. The main piece of evidence in the case was the bathtub. Police examined the bathtub for fingerprints and found what they believed to be human handprints. These were located closer to the middle of the bathtub. Using a reflective ultraviolet photographic process, fingerprints and stains were found on the bathtub. A fingerprint was found on the forearm, and hair follicle testing determined that it was left by an adult male, but the age of the fingerprint could not be determined. The police called in a medical expert, who testified that falling asleep and dying in a bathtub was unlikely unless illegal drugs or alcohol were involved. According to the expert, the sensation of water on the face could have awakened the person or triggered a reflex response to the airway. Otherwise, the reduction in oxygen in the muscles would have likely awakened the victim. In addition, the pathologist who performed the autopsy was called to testify. He stated that if Sarah had a dry body and wet hair, a likely explanation would be that her head had been pushed off the edge of the bathtub, toilet, or sink. She could have been pushed forward or backward, in running water or in a full bathtub. According to the prosecution's case, Ryan held Sarah's head underwater until she drowned, and on that basis, he should be convicted. Ryan's defense attorney argued that he was innocent, and that he had no motive to kill Sarah. The attorney said that if there had been a violent struggle, as the prosecution argued, there would have been evidence of that. However, there were no injuries on Ryan, and Sarah's fingernails were not broken or chipped. The attorney said that the injuries found on Sarah were the result of prolonged CPR, direct cardiac massage, and multiple attempts at intubation that night in the house, in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, and at the hospital itself. At the defense's request, a second autopsy was performed. Dr. Werner Spitz performed a second autopsy and again confirmed that the cause of death was drowning. He observed injuries to her neck, arms, upper lip, skull, a lacerated liver, and bleeding from her neck, but could not determine whether these injuries were due to CPR. Those present argued that the paramedics had been trying to resuscitate Sarah for about 45 minutes and that the deep bleeding inside Sarah's neck could have been caused by N4 being inserted into the area because paramedics could not reach the veins in her arms. Instead of ruling it a homicide, Dr. Werner Spitz ruled Sarah's death undetermined. The defense said her skin was dry because it dries faster than her hair. They also said that when Ryan found his wife unconscious, he pushed the drain in the bathtub, tried to help her, and called emergency services. This chain of events explains why her body was drier than expected. The water had drained out of the bathtub even before Ryan called 911. However, it is not yet known whether the jury's verdict would have changed if they had received credible evidence that Sarah's medical condition could have caused the drowning. The official reason for denying a new trial was that the jury had made errors in its investigation. Ryan was surprised when Jennifer Cruz came to the prosecutor's office to testify about Ryan's guilt. She said she was friends with Ryan and that he had been in regular contact with her by phone or email. According to Jennifer's testimony, he called on October 26, 2009, at 11:09 p.m. In a very upset voice, he told her that he had beaten Sarah in the living room on the day of her death. Sarah had discovered his infidelity and had seen inappropriate photos. They had argued for a long time, first downstairs and then in the bedroom. Ryan pushed her into the bathroom and left his wife there without checking to see what had happened to her. He was angry, and after calming down, he found Sarah floating in a bathtub full of water. To cover his tracks, he wiped up the water on the bathroom floor with a towel and came up with a plan for the accident. Ryan's attorneys worked hard to prove his innocence. They tried to throw out Jennifer's testimony because they thought it was unreasonable. One obvious example was that no towels were found in the house, including the dryer. And there was no evidence of infidelity in their marriage. The family had no financial problems and never argued. Ryan was described by friends as a kind and helpful person who never showed anger. Ryan would not benefit from his wife's death because he did not have a life insurance policy. Before the third trial began, Jennifer was discredited and barred from testifying. The call that Ryan allegedly confessed to her was not authenticated. In January 2011, a trial was held based on new evidence. The defense argued that Sarah had underlying medical conditions that could have caused her to suddenly lose consciousness and drown. Several medical experts testified in support of the defense, stating that some heart or neurological defect could have led to the loss of consciousness. However, the state's medical experts disagreed with this assessment. The trial also revealed additional details about Sarah's health and daily routine. Her co-workers testified that she often slept in her car before going to work at the dental office due to severe allergies and stomach aches. On the day of her death, Sarah had complained of headaches and stomach aches to her dentist boss. That evening, Sarah talked to a friend and mentioned her headaches and neck pain, and her friend said she looked extremely tired. Her ability to fall asleep quickly led her friends to think she might have narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is a sleep disorder characterized by excessive daytime sleepiness. People with narcolepsy often have difficulty staying awake and need to take frequent naps to cope. However, Sarah's mother, Ruth Ann Stewart, disputed this idea when she testified as a prosecution witness at trial. She claimed that she had never seen her daughter have sleep problems and described Sarah as a healthy and active child with a regular daily routine. Sarah's medical records also supported this claim. As a dental hygienist, Sarah had undergone regular checkups and her last checkup showed no signs of health problems. In addition, other witnesses who claimed Sarah was excessively sleepy gave unconvincing testimony. In cases where a person tries to strangle another from behind, the victim often suffers defensive injuries to the arms and legs, as well as injuries to the small bones in the neck. However, Sarah's autopsy did not show any such injuries. The defense urged the jury to consider all the facts surrounding the case, that Ryan had no reason to harm Sarah. Once again, the defense was defeated. After about 12 hours of deliberations, Ryan was convicted of murder and sentenced to 15 years in prison. The jury based their decision on the lack of water on Sarah's body and around the bathtub, and that Ryan's call to 911 was staged. One juror felt that Ryan's demeanor in court was one of the main reasons he believed Ryan was guilty. When the autopsy photos were shown, they felt that Ryan was completely unresponsive. Ryan did not take a stand, although he told the court after the verdict was announced, he loved his wife. He did not hurt her. Ryan remains in custody, awaiting a federal court ruling that could determine his parole status. After 14 years in prison, his first chance for parole will be in July 2025. With each passing year, Ryan holds out hope that the next year will bring him freedom. He continues to maintain his innocence and profess his love for Sarah, insisting that he did not harm her. Ryan's chances of parole in 2025 appear slim, as the parole board tends to favor inmates who show remorse. Since Ryan has always maintained his innocence, he could face an uphill battle for parole. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Alexandra Morgan. Alexandra Morgan, known as Alexandra to friends and family, is a single mother of 2 children, aged 4 and 11. They live in Wilsley Pound, Cranbrook, Kent. Alexandra has lost contact with the children's father and has had to raise them on her own, which has not been easy. According to some sources, she works as a dog groomer. Alexandra is described as a dynamic and ambitious woman who is always looking after her children. She wants her children to have a better life and has worked hard to achieve it. On November 13, 2021, Alexandra met her parents and left her children in their care. She said she was going on a spa holiday with friends for 3 days. However, by November 17, Alexandra had not returned to pick up her children as scheduled. Her parents began to worry because they could not contact Alexandra by phone or text, which was very unusual. After several unsuccessful attempts to find their daughter, they decided to report Alexandra missing to the police. Kent police suspect that Alexandra Morgan's disappearance is related to a crime. They began their investigation by looking into the spa where Alexandra said she was going to go with friends. The police also wanted to identify these friends. Start an investigation. Police have obtained video footage from a gas station in Cranbrook where Alexandra was last seen. They are trying to locate her by looking for her white Mini Cooper. On the morning of November 14th, Alexandra went to the gas station to fill up, made a few purchases, and then left. The video shows nothing unusual. Rose McCauley, the petrol station manager who has known Alexandra for 17 years, was there when Alexandra bought £10 worth of petrol, a cup of coffee and a snack on the morning she went missing. Rose said that no one knew what had happened to her or where she had gone. Rose continued that a friend and she had searched all over Hastings, but Alexandra was nowhere to be seen. She said that Alexandra wasn't shy, so she didn't think Alexandra was scared to go home. Rose just hoped nothing bad had happened and that Alexandra would get back safely. It was worrying, she added. When Alexandra arrived that Sunday morning, she was very well dressed, with more makeup than usual, her hair done and some eye-catching clothes. She arrived earlier than usual, looking happy and smiling. Alexandra's friends mentioned that in 2018, she shared on social media about being stalked by a stalker. In 2019, she posted a photo with the caption, "Hello Stalker," and included a message asking the stalker to stop following her page. A police spokesman said that it was unusual for Alexandra to have not contacted her family and that they were treating it as a possible murder. As the investigation continued, they were appealing for anyone who might have seen Alexandra or her white Mini Cooper with a black top to contact them. He added that even if people were not sure what they saw, they should report any suspicious information. Alexandra was described as a woman approximately 168 centimeters tall, of slim build, with shoulder-length brown hair. She was last seen wearing a knee-length green quilted jacket, a black top underneath, ripped blue jeans, knee-high black boots, and a silver necklace. Usually, when someone goes missing, they don't leave any traces behind to help the police investigate. Many missing cases remain unsolved. However, Alexandra Morgan's case is different. She left behind the last digital traces that helped the police find clues to her fate. Not only that, these traces also revealed some shocking secrets. Further investigation helped the police find out more information about Alexandra. She wanted to improve her finances, so she started working as a call girl and advertised her services online, without telling her family and friends. Women in this profession are among the most vulnerable. Everyone knows that they face risks because it is impossible to know in advance whether the next customer is normal or dangerous. This job is unsafe. According to the investigation, Alexandra had an appointment with a regular customer before she went missing. The police have arrested this man. On November 25, 2021, they arrested a 40-year-old man, Mark Brown, from St. Leonards-on-Sea on suspicion of murder. Mark Brown, a construction worker who is married with a son. His family were completely unaware of his secret life. Sussex police said that before Alexandra went missing, she had met Mark several times, and he had even bought her a Mini Cooper. Their first meeting took place on June 8, 2021, after Mark spotted her on an adult website. They met at her home in Sissinghurst, near Cranbrook, Kent. Things went well, and they continued to meet occasionally after that. The second meeting took place on June 21, nearly 2 weeks later. This time, Alexandra went to Little Bridge Farm near Hastings, Kent, a property Mark rented to meet women and for other purposes. They met 7 more times in August and September. Alexandra did not realize she was falling into a trap. On October 23, 2021, Mark sent her a text message asking if she would like to engage in a risk-free business transaction. He made an offer that involved £100,000 for 35 days at a hotel he would protect, a new ID, a straight car, and money for shopping. Mark asked her to do some simple tasks: go out for a smoke, pack the money, and buy a few things. After receiving this offer, Alexandra did some online research, which showed that she wanted to improve her children's lives. She learned about the minimum deposit for buying a house in 2021. Alexandra also intended to use the money to start a business. She searched for information such as profits from opening a sunbed shop in the UK and taxes to pay on £100,000. These actions showed Alexandra's character and desire to improve her life. Alexandra lied to her parents that she was going to the spa with friends, but in fact she was planning to meet Mark at the farm. On the morning of November 14th, she left home and was recorded on CCTV buying petrol in Cranbrook at 7:20 a.m. She arrived at Little Bridge Farm at around 8 a.m. 3 days later, on November 17th, Mark drove Alexandra's car to Holmhurst Lane, St. Leonards, after replacing the real number plates with fake ones. The following day, November 18th, Alexandra's mother reported her daughter to the police because she had not picked her up and had stopped communicating. On November 23rd, police discovered CCTV footage of Alexandra's car following Mark's Jaguar to Little Bridge Farm. Kent police sealed off the entrance to the farm and interviewed Mark. He admitted meeting Alexandra but claimed she had left after 45 minutes. Mark agreed to allow police to take his fingerprints and DNA. 2 days later, on November 25th, police arrested Mark as the prime suspect in Alexandra Morgan's disappearance. Before we get into what happened to Alexandra, we need to go back to when she met Mark Brown. At that time, Mark had a wife named Leah Ware. She was 33, and she was a mother of 3 who does not have custody of her children. Leah first met Mark on March 25, 2018, through a prostitution website where she advertised her services. A few years later, this same website is where Mark met Alexandra Morgan. In late 2018, Mark and Leah began a relationship and moved into an apartment together. After 6 months, when their lease expired, Leah moved into a shipping container at Mark's Little Bridge Farm. Mark describes their relationship as a roller coaster of ups and downs. Leah has had a complicated life. She received weekly benefits, which were usually administered by Mark. She had a history of drug use and mental illness, but many said she was trying to improve herself in order to gain custody of her children. Mark and Leah were in a 3-year relationship before Leah mysteriously disappeared in May 2021. On the evening of May 5th and early morning of May 6th, Leah was with Jack Tyler, a friend and convicted drug dealer. They used drugs together and had an intimate relationship that night. This was the last time anyone saw Leah. The last call from her phone was made at 8:55 a.m. on May 7th. Police believe Leah died that day. On June 8, 2021, Mark met Alexandra for the first time at her home. The meeting went well and Alexandra found Mark to be a reasonable and generous man. However, she did not know that just a month earlier, Leah, who had been in a relationship with Mark, had disappeared without a trace. During the investigation, detectives discovered important text messages from Mark. He sent them to his ex-girlfriend from high school 5 days after meeting Alexandra Morgan. However, the content of the messages had nothing to do with Alexandra and were about Leah. The message reads, "I'll try to be careful. This happened recently. It's a nasty thing to get rid of. Just an old oil drum, 5 liters of diesel, and everything is gone. It burns so hot, it almost glows white. My actions are heartbreaking. It's ironic that a psychopath has a conscience. Investigators suspect Alexandra Morgan is dead and may not be Mark's only victim." Sussex police are appealing to the public for help in locating Leah or her body, as well as any information relating to her disappearance. After arresting Mark on November 25, 2021, police searched his farm and found a container that showed signs of having been recently burned. Inside the container, experts found bone and tooth remains. Tests confirmed that these were those of Alexandra Morgan. In a joint statement, Kent and Sussex police expressed their condolences to Alexandra and Leah's families. They confirmed that Alexandra's remains had been found, but Leah's remains have not yet been found. The investigation is ongoing and police are appealing for anyone with information. Police described Leah as a white woman, 168 centimeters tall, of slim build, with very long black hair and blue eyes. She had 3 tattoos, a dragon on her right leg, Chinese characters on her right hip, and a fairy sitting on a flower with the name Ryan on her right leg. The search of Mark's house lasted about a month and ended on January 7, 2022. During the investigation, police discovered the skeleton of a Pomeranian dog at the bottom of the pond, with a heavy object tied to its neck. Investigators believe this was Leah's dog, which Mark threw into the pond after killing Leah. On February 1, 2022, police charged Mark with the murder of Leah Ware, although they did not find her remains. Mark had previously been charged with the murder of Alexandra Morgan. Mark initially denied all charges. However, when police presented evidence of him burning Alexandra Morgan's body, Mark admitted to Alexandra's death, but maintained that it was an accident. Mark Brown's trial began on October 17, 2022. During the trial, new information about the 2 cases was revealed. The jury heard that after Leah Ware went missing on May 7, 2021, Mark regularly used her new bank card to withdraw money from her account each week. The bank card was sent to the address of his sister Cheryl. In July 2021, the jury was informed that Mark had twice withdrawn £200 from Leah Ware's account shortly after transferring £200 into his own. When asked why, Mark explained that he could have used her £200 and then paid it back, as at that point, someone owed him £430, so he could have paid it back. Prosecuting attorney Duncan Atkinson asked if it was a coincidence that Leah had died after getting a new bank card. A surprised Mark replied that he didn't understand what Duncan meant and that, as far as he knew, Leah was still alive. Duncan continued by asking if Mark was trying to take Ms. Leah's money and pointed out that Leah was in a place where money didn't mean anything. Mark was confused and said he didn't understand what Duncan was talking about at all, adding that it sounded like they were talking about 2 different people. During the trial for Alexandra Morgan's death, Mark maintained that it was an accident. He explained that Alexandra slipped and fell on a piece of equipment in the workshop he rented at Little Bridge Farm, causing her to hit her head. When he rushed to her, he found Alexandra bleeding profusely. He grabbed a towel to try to stop the bleeding. But when he lifted her head to put the towel under, more blood came out. Prosecuting attorney Duncan Atkinson objected to the defendant's testimony, stating that when the defendant first saw the victim lying on her back on the ground, there was a lot of blood around her head. This clearly showed that she was seriously injured and needed immediate help, especially medical attention. This was obvious before the defendant did anything else. Mark replied that he was panicking and his first reaction was to grab a towel to stop the bleeding. After performing CPR and checking for breathing by holding a mirror to Alexandra Morgan's mouth and nose, Mark confirmed that she was dead. Over the next 5 minutes, he did 3 things. He used his sweater to block the blood, he went outside to vomit, and he retrieved his phone to call 911. He explained that he then decided to cover up the whole thing by wrapping Alexandra in a sleeping bag and wrapping a towel around her head to stop the bleeding. He questioned how he could prove it was an accident and admitted that the decision to cover it up was stupid and the worst mistake of his life. Mark then decided to dispose of Alexandra's body using an incinerator he had built from an old oil drum earlier that year and which he had often used to burn rubbish. "I had heard stories about burning dead bodies," he said, "and I didn't want anyone to stumble upon a body lying around." Mark therefore maintained that he had nothing to do with Leah Ware's disappearance and believed she was still alive, while Alexandra's death was assumed an accident. At the trial, the court heard testimony from Mark's boss, Alan, who said that Mark had warned him that the police might come to arrest him. This conversation took place on November 24th. When Alan asked why the police might arrest him, Mark replied, "For double murder." This answer was significant because Mark implicitly admitted that Leah Ware was dead and that Alexandra Morgan's death was not an accident. Mark denied those words, claiming he only mentioned a 25-year sentence for one murder, not a double murder. Prosecutor Duncan asked about the murder, and Mark admitted his feelings about Alexandra's case made him act as he did, despite his inability to prove his innocence. The jury also heard that Mark had deliberately smeared Alexandra and Leah reputations, as the prosecutor put it, to create a false image of the women. What people should remember about Leah and Alexandra is that they were always smiling and happy in life. They both deserve to be remembered by their loved ones for the wonderful qualities they were. On December 1st, 2022, a jury of 12 found Mark, 41, guilty on all counts. Judge Nicholas Hilliard said, "This is an extremely serious case and the impact on the victim's family is immeasurable." He announced that Mark would be sentenced to life in prison and that he would have to decide what minimum time Mark should serve, or even whether to grant clemency. The judge stressed that if Mark revealed what he had done to Leah Ware's body, he would take that information into account when sentencing. However, Mark did not take this opportunity. Before the judge delivered his verdict, the court heard from Leah Ware's mother, Rebecca Martin, about the impact the case had had on the family. "Mark continues to cause our family pain by not revealing what happened. Leah lost her life because Mark Brown wanted to satisfy his dark desires," she said. "He controlled and manipulated every aspect of her life. When she was no longer of any value, he abandoned her like a lifeless object." The court also heard from Alexandra Morgan's parents, who said Alexandra was intelligent, energetic, and determined to succeed. Despite the challenges she faced, she overcame them and held out hope for her future and the child she loved dearly. On January 13, 2023, the court sentenced Mark Brown to 2 life terms. He will be eligible for parole after 49 years. Judge Hilliard imposed the sentence in absentia because Mark refused to appear. He said, "No sentence can ever measure the number of lives lost. Nothing can undo the defendant's actions, it cannot. His conscience is not troubled by what he has done." Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Lynette Vonda Pontius. Lynette Pontius was born in Battle Creek, Michigan, USA. She was the youngest child in her family, with two brothers who were 2 and 3 years older than her. Lynette is very active, sociable and cheerful, so she is always popular in every group of friends. She very also attractive and caught the attention of the opposite sex. She never lacked boyfriends and led a somewhat carefree lifestyle. As a result, Lynette became pregnant and had to leave school in the 9th grade. When Lynette turned 16, she gave birth to her first child. She lived with the child's father for a while, but they eventually broke up. He showed no interest in Lynette or the baby. He disappeared and ignored all to contact him. Lynette's situation was difficult. She struggled to find a suitable job so that she could conveniently take care of her newborn child, and no one wanted to hire Lynette, a teenage mother. Eventually, Lynette found work at a fast food restaurant. To make ends meet, she continued to build relationships. She was interested in several guys in her social circle until she met Martin, a customer at the restaurant, who was 2 years older than her. Martin was from the same city as Lynette's. After high school, he took a part-time job at a private company owned by a married couple who made fences. He wasn't interested in pursuing higher education, so he spent his free time with friends. In 1999, Martin and Lynette started dating after being introduced by a mutual friend. Despite being somewhat bold, Martin was overall a likable person and always keeps a positive attitude. Lynette's relatives believe that he will be able to guide her in the right direction. However, there were rumors that Martin struggled with an addiction to mild substances. Martin and Lynette dated for less than a year, but during that time, he became part of Lynette's family. Her parents welcomed him with open arms, and he came and went from their home freely. However, love that blooms quickly also fades easily. Later, Martin admitted that Lynette was manipulative and accepted no disagreement from others. They had regular conflicts, which led to their breakup. It seemed like nothing special had happened, just two young people who didn't get along. But a few weeks after the breakup, everything changed when Lynette called Martin and told him she was pregnant. Initially, Martin doubted that the child was his, but Lynette insisted it was. A greater surprise came when Lynette was arrested for identity theft, cashing other people's checks, and several other minor scams. Her explanation was that she had committed these crimes out of desperation, as she had no other means of supporting her children. Despite her, Lynette faced the possibility of prison. To protect their first child from ending up in an orphanage, Martin chose to become the boy's legal guardian. He felt responsible for this child and wanted to provide as much support as possible. Martin was a thoughtful father who put his children's needs first. After Lynette's release from prison in 2005, he and Lynette came to a mutual agreement. Martin allowed the children to maintain contact with their mother, and during her imprisonment, he frequently took them to visit her for several hours. Martin made sure the kids had regular, extended visits with Lynette during her imprisonment. Martin has proven himself to be a thoughtful father. He took the children hiking and spent all his free time with them. Even after Lynette's release, life continued smoothly for the family. Martin and Lynette, who were once a couple, agreed on custody arrangements that allowed Lynette to have regular visits with their child. Lynette took custody of their older child. Meanwhile, she started dating a new man and soon became pregnant with her third child. She then officially published her relationship with the father of her unborn child. During this time, Martin had to leave Battle Creek and move to Kalamazoo. In Kalamazoo, he began a relationship with a new girl, Elizabeth, who also had a child. Martin and Lynette grew apart, but they remained connected through their daughter. At first, everything in the family seemed fine. However, Lynette became concerned as the distance between her and her daughter grew. Matters became more complicated in February 2007, when Martin Campbell was attacked at his girlfriend Elizabeth's house. During the attack, he was shot once in the leg and once in the shoulder. As Martin attempted to flee, he collapsed from the pain and shock. The attacker then pointed the gun at Martin's head and pulled the trigger twice. The attacker intended to empty the entire magazine into Martin. However, after 2 shots to the head, the weapon jammed. Determined to kill Martin, the criminal furiously began to hit his on the head with the pistol. He then left the bleeding Martin on the floor and calmly walked away. Meanwhile, the police continued their investigation and spoke with a witness. Elizabeth provided the first clues about the criminal. Although he wore a mask, she noticed that he appeared much older, as she saw a mustache with gray hairs peeking through. The killer's behavior was clear. He didn't steal anything or attack Elizabeth. His target was Martin. This was evident from the brutality of the attack, which left no chance for Martin's survival. At that time, doctors were trying to save Martin's life. Despite suffering severe head and face injuries, he survived, which was nothing short of a miracle. He was fortunate because the gun jammed. Even a shot to the head could have been fatal. The first bullet hit his shoulder and narrowly missed a major artery. Had it been severed, Martin would have bled to death before the ambulance arrived. Martin's miraculous survival was also crucial for the investigation, as it allowed detectives to get information directly from him. Once his condition stabilized, detectives visited him in the hospital to talk. Martin and Elizabeth were certain that the attempted murder was not a random. This was the second attempt on his life that he had survived. In late February, just days before the shooting, Elizabeth reported an attempted murder while she was returning from the store. As she drove into the garage, a stranger crashed into her car's trunk, blocking her vehicle and the garage door, preventing it from closing. She got out and saw a black SUV, from which a weapon man emerged. The man pointed a gun at Elizabeth's head and asked where Martin was. However, she remained calm and told him that Martin was not home. This was a lie, as she knew Martin was playing with the children in the backyard. She lied to protect their lives. Her tactic worked. The man believed her and left. Before leaving, he mentioned that Martin owed him a large sum of money, and he was there to collect the debt, warning that he would not leave them alone. At that time, Elizabeth contacted the police and provided a detailed description of the man and his car. Additionally, a neighbor witnessed the skirmish, sensed something was wrong, and noted the car's license plate. However, the police discovered that the car was reported stolen and registered in another state, which did not help the investigation. It seemed the search for the criminal had reached a dead end. Nevertheless, a similar car was found a few blocks from the attack site in an apartment complex parking lot. The police attempted to track down the driver of the black SUV but were unsuccessful. The day before the unexpected attack, a masked man broke into Martin and Elizabeth's house and shot Martin at close range. Martin was certain that the killer had been sent by his ex, Lynette Pontius. She was the only person with a motive against he. Her criminal record raised suspicions, as she had previously spent 2 years in prison for financial crimes, including fraud and extortion. However, initially after her release, there were no issues, and Martin did not restrict her communication with their child. Lynette quickly begins to control things and she wants more. She sought to control the process of raising her children and would behave brutal when she was dissatisfied with something. This led to constant conflicts. As a result, Martin decided to reduce the time his daughter spent with her biological mother, Lynette, which further angered she. Finally, she went to court to dispute Martin's custody. However, she faced an obstacle due to her previous convictions, which worked against her, giving Martin a strong chance of winning. This could have been the last straw, making her hate him more and more. Investigators had several questions, particularly about why Lynette had resorted to such actions. Until now, no one had ever observed any aggressive behavior in Lynette. All her relatives and friends knew her as a kind and cheerful person. Additionally, it was clear that the attacker was an older man on both occasions, suggesting that Lynette might truly be innocent. To find answers, the detectives decided to directly contact the main suspect in organizing the assassination attempt. They were surprised to discover that Lynette had left her hometown the day after the shooting at the house Martin. Elizabeth found it suspicious to exclude Lynette from the suspect list. However, finding and detaining Lynette was not easy. It was discovered that she was trying to flee the country, and a nationwide search was launched to capture her. During this time, detectives received another lead. It was revealed that Martin may owe large sums of money from criminal organizations. Some of Martin's friends mentioned that he had been in debt for a long time. Martin used to consume soft substances and smoke. He admitted this to the police but insisted that those days were behind him. Martin claimed that he only used these substances during his meet with Lynette and had quit his bad habits long ago. Before Lynette was caught, a prisoner from the local jail informed the police that Lynette had approached him some time before the attack, offering money to carry out an attack Martin. Lynette was searching for a mercenary to kill Martin. She devised a cunning plan. Accordingly, the killer must win Martin's trust, and after a while, get him drunk or full of mild narcotics to ensure unconsciousness. Afterward, the hired killer would eliminate Martin. Lynette believed it would be best to make it look like an accident. Overall, she didn't care about the method, as long as Martin dies, so that she can gain custody of their daughter. Later, the police gathered evidence from various individuals who reported receiving similar requests and provocations from Lynette. Many people claimed that she had tried to hire them as mercenaries, but none of them were actual shooters, and they all declined the offer. Fortunately, the police quickly identified the killer, who was likely the person who agreed to help Lynette. This suspect was a 59-year-old man named Joseph Lover, who was romantically involved with Lynette. He had a history of involvement in numerous serious crimes. Joseph fit the description of the attacker and was capable of carrying out such a bold attack in broad daylight. The brutal massacre aligned with the style of Joseph, a man who had spent most of his life in prison. However, when the police attempted to locate him, they discovered that he had left the city around the same time Lynette disappeared. It is likely that they fled together. Lynette and Joseph managed to stay hidden until February 13, 2007, when they were discovered near the Mexico-US border. They had been planning to escape to another country to avoid facing justice. However, Lynette realized she needed to retrieve some important documents she had left behind in Mexico and had to return for them. Unfortunately for them, the police were already there waiting to capture them. 5 days later, they were taken into custody, which was a great relief for Martin, who was worried about another attack. Although he was pleased with the arrest, the investigation struggled to communicate with the criminals. Surprisingly, Joseph was very cooperative with the detectives. He admitted he was driving a stolen car and having a pistol, hoping for a reduced sentence. However, he consistently denied being involved in the attack and attempted murder of Martin. Lynette partially backed up his claims, stating she had hired a mercenary to confront Martin. Her intention, she said, was not to kill him but to scare him into relinquishing custody of their daughter. Being separated from her daughter made Lynette extremely miserable. She claimed that Martin did not allow her to see her daughter. Additionally, she alleged that she found evidence of Martin abusing her daughter. Lynette accused Martin of substance abuse and domestic violence. She also shared details about their relationship, stating that Martin had repeatedly beaten her, which led to their breakup. Lynette did not see him as a benefactor, said that he took advantage of her difficult circumstances when their daughter was born. He allegedly forced her to sign documents and formalize guardianship while she was helpless in prison. She believes Martin acted shamelessly in taking advantage of her situation. The interrogations of the two suspects, Lynette and Joseph, happened at the same time, but in different rooms to compare their stories. The investigators, having received information from Lynette, decided to confront Joseph. Initially, Joseph refused to tell the truth. However, once he learned that Lynette the crime was trying to turn him in to the police, Joseph changed his story. He claimed that Lynette had first approached him in 2007 with a request to kill Martin. Lynette didn't care how Martin died, she just wanted him gone forever. The plan was for Martin to disappear without any witnesses, and his body would be disposed of discreetly. But Lynette didn't expect Joseph to act in a dramatic manner. Joseph's story matched with what the police already knew. During the investigation, the police chose to disclose this information to observe Lynette's response. Lynette, however, cleverly refused to give a statement and asked for a lawyer. Prosecutors claimed that Lynette's main motive was her dissatisfaction with the decisions regarding her child's upbringing and restrictions on communicating with him. She tried to challenge custody in court but was unsuccessful. After that, Lynette didn't stop and decided to hire a hitman. Joseph Lover, 51 years old, was also charged with attempted murder. This man admitted his guilt and provided the police with a detailed report. The trial was full of surprises, starting when Joseph unexpectedly changed his earlier testimony during the hearing. He retracted his previous statements and took full responsibility for the incident, claiming that Lynette was not involved and that he was solely responsible for planning and executing the assassination attempt. It seemed like Joseph loved Lynette so much that he wanted to protect her. However, before the next stage of the hearing, Joseph shocked everyone again by reverting to his original story, asserting that Lynette had hired him as a hitman. To obtain these confessions the prosecution suggested a plea deal. In this case, the prosecutor's office re-entered the proceedings, aiming to demonstrate that Lynette had a justified motive. Lynette clearly disliked Martin due to dissatisfaction with custody arrangements. However, the prosecutor's office relied on very limited evidence. In reality, there was nothing concrete to directly implicate Lynette in the crime. There were no phone records or messages, and Joseph, the sole witness, was unreliable, which weakened the prosecution's position. Lynette's lawyer effectively used these weaknesses to persuade the jury of her innocence. On October 3rd of that year, Joseph confirmed to the jury that Lynette was the mastermind behind the plan to kill Martin. He confirmed that she had formulated the whole plan. However, his numerous contradictions and retractions during the testimony made the jury question his credibility. The defense then made a surprising move. According to Lynette, Martin was an abusive father who often physically harmed his daughter. She presented photos showing bruises on the child's arms and back as evidence. In response, Martin's family defended him by disputing these accusations. They suggested the photos only showed minor abrasions that a child might get accidentally, arguing they did not resemble signs of abuse. They even implied that Lynette herself might have caused the bruises. Despite the defenses put forward by Martin's relatives, Lynette successfully raised doubts in the jury's minds, she portraying herself as a victim. This thing aimed to make Martin's murder seem like an act of kindness in protection of the child. In the end, the lawyers portrayed her accomplice, Joseph, as a true hero. They argued that Joseph was protecting Lynette and her daughter. Lynette did not ask for Martin to be killed, she only wanted to scare him. However, Joseph, a seasoned criminal, believed he was rescuing the girl from cruelty and tyranny, which led him to kill Martin. Additionally, the defense argued that Lynette could not have planned the murder herself, because if that had happened, she would likely have faced life in prison. This was inconsistent with the image of a loving, caring mother seeking custody of her child. Now, the jury had to make a decision in this complicated case. On October 5, 2007, after lengthy discussions, the jury announced the verdict in this case. Lynette was found guilty of orchestrating the attack. Her extravagant lifestyle and criminal record worked against her. The jury didn't believe the lawyer who portrayed Martin as an abuser involved in domestic violence against the child. In fact, there was no evidence to support these claims. Lynette's family was shocked by the jury's verdict. Initially, Lynette was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 50 years, but the sentence was later changed. However, the judge considered Lynette to be a socially dangerous person. He sincerely expressed his hope that no parole board would ever decide to release the woman. Lynette remains in the Huron Correctional Facility for women. She has served enough of her sentence to apply for parole and has submitted a petition. Lynette is hopeful about being released soon. But no decision has been made yet. Martin's family hoped she will never be released. Her accomplice, Joseph, received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Chiara Poggi. Chiara Poggi was born in Vigai, Italy, on March 31, 1981. She studied economics and landed a job as a financier at a large company. She was a delicate girl with expressive blue eyes. She was determined to advance her career and become a manager, with the ultimate goal of starting her own business. To achieve this, she focused on her studies and graduated. Alongside her professional ambitions, Chiara also wanted to start a family. At that time, she had been in a relationship with a man named Alberto for 7 years. Unfortunately, all her dreams seemed to stop there, as fate had other plans for her. On August 13, 2007, at approximately 9:12 a.m., Chiara was going about her daily routine when someone knocked on her door. She opened it, unaware that this decision would lead to her death just a few hours later. At 1:50 p.m., Alberto called the Italian Emergency Services, 118, to report a tragedy at his girlfriend's home. Alberto had discovered Chiara's body. He explained that he had visited and found her lying in a pool of blood. When the dispatcher asked if he could help the victim, Alberto said he couldn't bear to look at the scene and had already left to contact the police. He provided the address and implied that his girlfriend was already dead when he called. When asked why he did not wait for the police at the scene, the Alberto explained that the house was located on a dead-end street, making it hard for the police to find. He decided to go to the police himself and bring them to the tragedy scene to prevent confusion. The Carabinieri arrived after being directed by the emergency services dispatcher. All the doors of the house were locked, so the officers had to climb over the fence. Once inside the kitchen, they discovered signs of a struggle. The Chiara seemed to have been attacked while cooking. Dishes were scattered, and there were open boxes containing a knitting needle, which suggested a confrontation might have taken place. The police also found initial evidence of a violent crime. There were drops of blood on the floor. And in the room near the exit, they discovered a potholder and white slippers that were later confirmed to belong to the Chiara. The Carabinieri entered the next room and discovered Chiara lying face down on the steps near the basement entrance. She appeared to have been taken by surprise, as she was still wearing her pink summer pajamas. Chiara showed signs of a severe beating. It seemed she had been struck multiple times with a heavy object, likely a hammer. The police officers quickly spotted important evidence in the pool of blood, a strand of hair that obviously did not belong to Chiara and a distinctive shoe print left in the dried blood. The lack of warmth in the Chiara's body suggested that she had been killed a few hours earlier. The police quickly contacted Chiara's parents. Rita, the mother, was on vacation in Trentino and had missed the call. She called back around 3:30 p.m. and was so distraught by the news that she nearly fainted. She rushed back to the city. When Rita arrived at the police station, her husband, Giuseppe, Chiara's father, was there. Nicola Stassi, Alberto's father, was also there when his son was brought to the station. Alberto called his father for support. Alberto, 20, shared his story of events with the police by the time Chiara's parents arrived. Alberto said he called Chiara at 9:45 a.m., but she did not answer. He was not concerned at first, thinking she might still be asleep. After noon, he made several attempts to contact her on both her cell phone and her home phone, but received no response. At 11:15 a.m., he decided to go play golf. After returning from his match at around 12:30 p.m., Alberto found all of Chiara's doors locked and she was not answering his phone calls. Worried, he climbed over the fence and tried to open the door, but it was locked. He then broke in through the kitchen window, the only way into the house. Inside, he found the TV on. At first, he thought Chiara might still be asleep in her room. However, when he could not find her, he went into the kitchen and saw drops of blood on the dishes. He then went into the living room, where he discovered her body, leaving him in shock. It's strange that he didn't approach Chiara to check on her or try to help. Instead, he ran to get the investigator. At that moment, she was still alive, and she might have been saved. Rather than ensuring his girlfriend was okay or providing first aid, he left the house and headed to the police station. Once in the car, he called for an ambulance. During the police interrogation, they noticed his odd behavior and questioned why he didn't check if the girl was breathing. Instead of helping her, he just ran away and called the police. Alberto explained that he was scared and confused, which led him to call for help right away. However, he could have stayed, called for medics, and waited for the ambulance while performing CPR. He claimed he left because he felt unsafe in the house after the attack and sought protection from police. The Alberto spent the entire day at the police station and around midnight. He was getting ready to meet with the police again to answer their questions. Meanwhile, forensic experts were carefully examining the crime scene and were puzzled by a footprint found in a pool of the Chiara's blood. They asked Alberto to show them his shoes. He was wearing special white golf shoes that were spotless. He claimed he had been wearing them when he arrived at his girlfriend's house. However, this raised suspicions because the floor around the body was covered in blood. How could someone walk around in such a bloody scene without getting any blood on their shoes? There wasn't a single drop of blood on the soles, and the Alberto couldn't provide a clear explanation for this. The police decided to question Alberto about his relationship with Chiara, the murdered girl. Alberto described their relationship as wonderful, claiming they had very few problems. Like any couple, they occasionally argued, but these conflicts were minor and quickly resolved. The police then asked him for more details about the events leading up to her death to help establish a timeline and identify any suspicious activity. However, Alberto offered no significant information. The police took his fingerprints and ultimately released him due to a lack of evidence, keeping him at the police station for just under a day. Finally, around 7 a.m., Alberto got into his father's car and went home. On August 17th, when police examined the search history and files on Alberto's computer, he claimed he woke up early that morning, around 9 a.m., and was working on his thesis while trying to call his girlfriend, after which he went to play golf. Evidence confirmed that he was home, fed his dog, and then left the house. Although it seemed that Alberto had an alibi, the police remained suspicious. The police continued their investigation to reconstruct the timeline of the attack. They were particularly focused on how the crime occurred and still needed to identify the murder weapon. Based on the condition of the Chiara's body, it appeared the attacker used a metal object, possibly something like a hammer with a pointed end or an ice pick. At that point, the forensic report indicated that Chiara was likely murdered between 9 and 10 in the morning. When the police examined the prime Alberto's mobile phone records, they discovered that his mother called him daily just before 10 a.m. Elizabeth, the mother, confirmed that she spoke to her son that day to check on a friend, seemingly validating his alibi and suggesting he could not have committed the murder during that time. However, upon further investigation of the call logs, the police found that the mother did not call her son that day, raising suspicions. Alberto's motives are unclear. Friends confirm that Chiara and Alberto had a wonderful relationship, with only minor disagreements that are typical of any young couple. A friend named Marco saw Alberto the day after the tragic event and noticed that Alberto seemed distressed. He refused to eat and spoke very little, often expressing his deep sadness over Chiara's death. Meanwhile, the investigation was progressing. The police had gathered preliminary investigation materials, autopsy reports, and numerous witness testimonies about the couple. After August 20th, forensic experts continued analyzing the evidence, including hair found in a pool of blood that did not belong to the Chiara. They also examined materials collected from under Chiara's fingernails. Additionally, several blood splatters were discovered in the house that did not seem to match Chiara's, suggesting they might belong to the assailant. On the morning of August 22nd, Alberto visited the police station to obtain some documents. He spent a few hours speaking with the police, who were hoping to gather new information from him. Additionally, at 2 p.m., Alberto was scheduled to take part in an interrogation with the prosecutor present. With police showing increased interest, the Alberto was preparing for his meeting with his lawyer. By this time, Alberto had already spent over 26 hours at the station, providing the police with all the information they requested. He repeated his account of the events from August 13th. But the police were more focused on the evening of the 12th, the night before the bloody massacre took place. That night, the couple ordered 2 pizzas from a nearby restaurant and spent the evening eating and watching TV. Alberto then went home. Police scrutinized every detail of his statement for any inconsistencies, especially questioning why Alberto left after dinner. Throughout the investigation, Alberto repeatedly maintained that he had nothing to do with his girlfriend Chiara's death. The prosecution remained skeptical. He questions why there was no blood on Alberto's white sneakers as he moved around the house. Was he really that cautious? Why did Alberto leave on the night of the 12th instead of staying with Chiara? And why did he not help her when he found her unconscious? Unexpectedly, Chiara's neighbor provided some information. At around 9 a.m., she noticed a bicycle parked near the entrance to Chiara's house. As a cyclist, she found this strange, as she had never seen Chiara or Alberto riding such a bicycle. Later, the bicycle was spotted near Chiara's fence. The neighbor, who was knowledgeable about bicycles, realized that it was a women's model equipped with unusual accessories not usually found on regular bicycles. The woman did not think about what would happen next. She looked out her window around 10 o'clock or 10:30 a.m. and noticed that the vehicle was no longer by the neighbor's fence. This information caught the police's attention, as it might be an important clue. The police realized that finding this bike could significantly advance their investigation, as locating the owner might lead them to the killer. However, their search for this type of bike hit a dead end because the description provided was too vague. Later, another neighbor, a 47-year-old woman, contacted the police. She reported seeing a bike near Chiara's house at 9:30 a.m. and confirmed it was a women's model with a new color, although some details did not match. It's possible that one of the neighbors had remembered those details incorrectly. Meanwhile, over several days, several lawyers defended Alberto, including his brothers, Giulio and Giuseppe Colli, who worked in the Vi Giovanna Bar Association. However, by this time, the police had discovered the complicated love story between Chiara and Alberto. The love between the Chiara and Alberto was genuine, and their relationship was going well. This was evident to those who knew them and was reflected in their frequent exchanges of affectionate messages. They hardly ever argued, and when they did, the disagreements were minor and quickly resolved. However, in the week leading up to the incident, some unusual changes were observed in their relationship. It seems that Chiara has recently stopped wanting to see Alberto, and they have started sleeping in separate rooms even when he stays overnight. Alberto attributes this behavior to the fact that he prefers to sleep in a double bed in Chiara's brother's room, where he finds it more comfortable. There were very few photographs of the couple together, raising concerns about their relationship. Instead, the Alberto's secret folder contained hundreds of photos of women's feet in shoes, leading to suspicions that the couple's seemingly happy exterior was hiding deeper issues. This raised the question, could Alberto's unusual fetish have been connected to the murder? The case took a dramatic turn 43 days after Chiara's death, when police discovered Alberto's sister's bicycle, matching a neighbor's description. Blood was found on the pedals, which was later confirmed through laboratory testing to be Chiara's. However, Alberto's sister had a solid alibi, as she was at work at the time of the incident. Initially, Alberto was believed to have borrowed his sister's bicycle. The family and the community were shocked. They did not believe Chiara's boyfriend was guilty until the very end. However, when traces of her DNA were found on the pedals of the bike, they had no choice but to accept his guilt. Relatives were also shocked by Alberto's behavior. He met with them several times after the tragedy and still steadfastly maintained his innocence. The parents displayed clear signs of their grief. The lawyer passionately defended his client, trying to explain the presence of the Chiara's blood on the pedals, despite the significant amount found, which was not just a few drops. The defense attempted to dismiss this evidence by suggesting it could be related to menstruation and other implausible theories. Ultimately, despite these efforts, Alberto was arrested. On September 28, the judge reviewed the case file and determined that there was not enough evidence against the suspect, leading to Alberto's immediate release from prison. The case file was then sent back to the prosecution for further examination. Police had found a significant amount of specific pornographic material on the Alberto's computer. They believed that his girlfriend might have discovered his secret fetish, which could have caused tension between them. A conflict arose, and this seems plausible considering that on August 12, the day before the incident, the Alberto had been working on his laptop at Chiara's place and had left it there, giving her access to the stored information. Alberto had many photographs of women's shoes that he seemed to have taken himself, particularly during a recent trip to London shortly before his relationship with Chiara started to decline. Additionally, there were images capturing private moments between the Chiara and Alberto. These photos were blurred, but the girl appeared to be quite embarrassed in them. It's possible that the Alberto's specific preferences in intimacy contributed to their disagreements. Alberto acknowledged that he has certain fetishes, but he claimed that the Chiara always accepted, and it never caused any issues between them. On November 3, 2008, Alberto was charged once more. Police believed they had sufficient evidence to link him to Chiara's murder. It was clear that the Alberto knew the victim well, as he had unrestricted access to her home. This was supported by the fact that nothing was broken or stolen, and the Chiara was found wearing her home clothes. The strongest evidence was a footprint found in the Chiara's blood. It was a size 42 shoe print that matched the Alberto's foot size. After committing the crime, Alberto replaced his old shoes with a brand new pair that he wore during his first interrogation. Despite blood prints being found on the bicycle pedals, he persisted in denying any involvement. It seems he successfully disposed of the sneakers he wore when he left the Chiara's house after the murder. On February 24, 2009, during the preliminary hearing, the prosecution requested a 30-year prison sentence. Although they had initially requested a life sentence, after reviewing the case documents, the judge determined that further improvements were needed. He identified many of the evidence as being implausible. Extensive research was conducted, including a reconstruction of the events using computer models. A comprehensive model of Chiara's house was built, allowing the police to track the killer's movements. On August 13, 2009, a detailed report was submitted to the court. According to this report, the Alberto turned on his computer at 9:35 a.m. and viewed several pornographic photographs. He continued this activity until 12:20 p.m. and identified only 3 possible time intervals during which the murder could have occurred. The house alarm was deactivated at 9:12 a.m., and there is no information about Alberto's activities between then and 9:35 a.m. The second time window for the murder was from 12:20 p.m. to 12:46 p.m., as the Alberto called Chiara's mobile phone from his home shortly after 12:46 p.m. There was also a time frame available for the murder from 12:46 p.m. to 1:26 p.m. The forensic expert determined that the Chiara likely died between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning, suggesting that the earlier time frame was more plausible. Meanwhile, the defense pointed out several mistakes made by the police during the investigation. The forensic expert noted that evidence was mishandled. There were numerous errors and inconsistencies, including the failure to collect the Chiara's fingerprints. Police also did not investigate other people who may have used the bicycle seen near Chiara's house, which weakened the prosecution's case. Additionally, the provisional time frame established suggests that Alberto had no more than 23 minutes to commit the crime, set up the scene, escape, and dispose of the shoes. Alberto lived a mile from Chiara's house, and if he had been able to ride his bicycle to Chiara's house, it would have been physically difficult and inconsistent with the timeline of events. Despite this, the prosecution believed he could have done so. On December 17th, the judge left the courtroom to consider his verdict. The prosecution asked for a 30-year prison sentence. However, they failed to present convincing evidence of his guilt. There were no bloody shoes, video footage, witness testimony, or obvious motives linking Alberto to the murder. Ultimately, the judge found Alberto not guilty. The verdict shocked the local community, which had expected a different outcome and labeled Alberto a murderer. However, the case did not end there. Chiara's family filed an appeal on November 8, 2011, leading to a new trial. This hearing lasted several weeks, during which the public and media were barred from the courtroom, allowing journalists only to enter when the decision was announced. The court acquitted the Alberto Stasi once more during a retrial on April 18, 2013. The lawyer emphasized that the charges lacked grounding and that there was insufficient evidence. He also argued that it would have been impossible for Alberto to commit the murder and cover up the evidence in just 23 minutes. Following the death of Alberto's father, who was killed in a Pavia hospital on April 9, 2014, a new phase in the investigation began. This phase included various pieces of evidence, such as computer modeling and a thorough analysis of a bicycle found in the Alberto's home. Unexpectedly, during this investigation, Alberto confessed to murdering Chiara. The case was so complex that without this confession, he likely would have been acquitted again. However, under public pressure, he ultimately admitted his guilt. On December 17, 2014, 37-year-old Alberto Stasi received a 16-year prison sentence and was ordered to pay €1 million in compensation to the Chiara's family. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Hunt family. In New South Wales, there is a small rural town called Lockhart, located between Sydney and Melbourne, where the central figures of our story lived. With a population of around 800, it was a quiet and close-knit community. Here, we find the farm belonging to the Hunt family, which had 3 children. The head of the family, Jeff Hunt, was 44 years old, and his wife Kim was 3 years younger. They met during their university years, where they were both active and athletic. They were immediately drawn to each other and became inseparable, eventually marrying and aspiring to build a large, loving family. The people of Lockhart held the Hunts in high regard, appreciating them for their kindness, friendliness, and involvement in the community. Kim Hunt had always dreamed of helping people. After finishing school, she enrolled in university to study medicine. Once she graduated, she began working at a hospital as a nurse in the intensive care unit. where she took pride in saving lives. She felt that her dream had finally come true. In her spare time, she enjoyed horseback riding and worked on their family farm, growing rapeseed alongside her brother Alan, continuing the legacy of their parents. At the time of these events, the family was overcoming a difficult period in their lives. Jeff and Kim supported each other, which helped them recognize each other's positive traits. They had 3 children who adored them: Fletcher, the eldest at 10 years old, Mia, who was 8, and Phoebe, the youngest at 6. The family was well respected in their town, partly due to their active involvement in local volunteer work. However, they faced significant challenges. In 2012, Kim and Phoebe, her youngest daughter, were in a serious car accident when Kim lost control, causing the vehicle to roll over twice. While her daughter Phoebe sustained only minor injuries, Kim's condition was much more severe. Doctors fought to save her life, and she spent a long time in a medically induced coma, ultimately miraculously surviving. After this traumatic event, Kim underwent a lengthy recovery process. Initially, doctors believed she might only be suitable as an organ donor and did not expect her to regain a normal life. However, Jeff, her husband, refused to accept this outcome. He dedicated himself to supporting Kim throughout her rehabilitation, believing they could overcome the odds. With his encouragement, Kim gradually learned to walk, eat, talk, and perform daily tasks again. Nonetheless, it was clear that she would never fully return to her previous self. Jeff took on the responsibilities of caring for his children and wife while also working. Although relatives provided some help, it was insufficient. To ease their burden, Jeff hired a nurse for his wife and a housekeeper, which greatly improved their lives. Doctors acknowledged Jeff's significant role in Kim's recovery, but specialists and family members remarked that the accident had fundamentally changed her life and personality. Kim lost her temper easily and experienced frequent mood swings, often directed at Jeff. Despite this, Jeff was patient, fully understanding how challenging her recovery was. Over time, things began to improve. Kim started to walk and move around more, gradually participating in household chores and making an effort not to be a burden. She was used to being independent and self-sufficient, so she aimed to return to her previous life, but found it all quite difficult. Kim was trying to manage the household and care for 3 children, which was challenging for someone recovering from a severe car accident that caused significant brain and spinal cord injuries. This created immense daily stress, which began to affect all aspects of the household, including her relationship with her husband. Jeff was also feeling the strain. In addition to the household challenges, he was facing serious financial issues. Initially, he found it hard to balance supporting his family with the increasing financial pressure. While his wife took care of the home and children, he was also working on the farm, which made it difficult for him to manage everything, particularly the harvest. They were spending a lot on medications, leaving them struggling to make ends meet. During Kim's rehabilitation, Jeff experienced several nervous breakdowns due to the overwhelming stress. Doctors observed a significant improvement in Kim's mental health. Previously, she had expressed to them that she was struggling and often thought about death. Kim felt that it would be easier for everyone if she were to die in an accident, believing it would spare others from having to support her. To prevent any potential tragedy, all firearms were taken from the Hunt family's farm. However, since they were necessary for self-defense and farming, the firearms were quickly returned but kept hidden from Kim. She had been on extended leave from work, which she missed greatly, as it used to bring her joy. What weighed most heavily on her were the children, whom she loved dearly and spent all her time with. In 2013, she began to recover and returned to work as a nurse. Initially, she couldn't work the same way she had before, as she quickly became tired and frequently forgot things. To aid her rehabilitation, she started with a small workload, working no more than 8 hours a week as a junior staff intern. She also resumed volunteering, focusing on topics that were meaningful to her. She spoke about road safety and traumatic brain injuries, sharing her own experiences to connect with others and offer support. By August 2014, the Hunt family felt they were returning to a normal life. Kim's sister, Jenny, visited her to celebrate Phoebe's daughter's 6th birthday. The celebration felt reminiscent of happier times before the tragedy, bringing Jenny joy. It appeared that things had settled down, and they had overcome their struggles. However, Jenny had no idea this would be her last visit with younger sister. On September 8, 2014, Kim took the children to the school bus stop for their usual day at school. In the afternoon, the housekeeper, Lauren, arrived to help with housework. The children's school day went smoothly, and around 3:30 p.m., Kim and the kids returned home. The previous day had been Father's Day, and Jeff was supposed to spend it with the children while Kim rested. Due to her injuries, she often tired quickly and needed a nap. Overall, the day was pleasant until a minor conflict arose between Jeff and their eldest son, 10-year-old Fletcher, over a football game. Jeff, who typically refereed the children's matches, disagreed with Fletcher's actions during the game, leading to tension. Kim comforted Fletcher after the disagreement. Later, Jeff decided to visit his parents on the farm for the holiday without his family. He explained that Kim, the children, and Lauren stayed behind to finish their chores, which is why they did not accompany him. His parents noticed that their son seemed lost that day. He wasn't smiling as he usually did and wasn't communicating much. It was difficult to get him to talk, which was unusual for him since he was normally positive, sociable, and cheerful. However, this time he seemed sad, and they quickly realized something was wrong. They tried to ask Jeff what had happened, but he avoided answering and eventually went home. According to Lauren's testimony, there was a minor conflict between Jeff and Kim that day. It didn't seem serious, but it had upset Jeff, who then went to play golf, leaving his wife with the children. When he returned, he sent the kids to take a shower. Around 7 p.m., they watched a family show on TV before having a snack and going to bed. Kim, still upset from a previous argument. Her frustration stemmed from the fight and his choices, such as giving the children unhealthy food and letting them watch TV, which were against her rules. She also mentioned that one of her husband's brothers had taken money from their family fund to purchase a house and a car. Additionally, she was upset that her husband was giving large amounts of money to his family from the fund from there. Around 7:30 p.m., the house was quiet after the Lauren left. She said goodbye to the family, with the children hugging her, and Jeff called out, "Goodbye, thank you, see you tomorrow." What transpired in the house afterward remains unclear. Later, the Lauren informed the police that the family atmosphere had been tense throughout the day, but she never imagined the horror that unfolded after she left. The Lauren returned to the farm during the day, as she usually did. As she approached the house, she noticed Kim lying on the lawn. She was still in her pajamas. Concerned that Kim had fallen and needed help, Lauren rushed over. However, as she got closer, she saw that Kim was not moving, and her face was covered by 2 jackets. When Lauren removed the jackets, she realized it was too late to help. Kim was dead from a gunshot wound to the head and was lying in a pool of blood. Her body was already cold, and the horrifying scene terrified Lauren. She immediately called emergency services. When the medics arrived, they confirmed that the 41-year-old Kim Hunt was dead. Kim had been shot at close range, with the bullet entering just above her right eye, leaving her with no chance of survival. The medics entered the house and soon found a shell casing on the floor in the hallway, indicating that the murder had occurred there. When police arrived and searched the house, they found Fletcher, Phoebe, and Mia murdered in their bedrooms, all 3 children shot in the head. A note written on a napkin was found on the kitchen table. The note, written in adult handwriting, read, "I'm sorry, it's all my fault." But it is unclear who wrote it. Although it is believed that Jeff, the husband, wrote the note, but it was not possible to find him. There are two possibilities: the criminals attacked the house, murdered Jeff's family and kidnapped him, or he himself was responsible for the deaths and went into hiding. Ultimately, the case could only be cleared up if Jeff was found. He was therefore declared a wanted man and an active search was launched. There was no evidence of anyone else in the house, no fingerprints or DNA, and no signs of forced entry. News of this tragic event spread quickly throughout the community. People were shocked and frightened, trying to understand what had happened in the Hunt family home that night. Many found it hard to believe that their neighbor, Jeff, could have committed such acts. People were genuinely concerned about his whereabouts and safety, thinking that he could be the next victim of the killers. As a result, the community called for a quick resolution of the case and the arrest of the criminals to restore safety to the area. The police conducted an investigation around the farm for an extended period until they discovered fresh tire tracks the following day. These tracks led them to a small dam located a few hundred meters from the Hunt family home. Divers searching the reservoir, which was about 1.5 meters deep, found the body of Jeff Hunt along with a shotgun. He died of a gunshot wound to the top of the head. And it was apparent that he ended his life by putting the gun in his mouth. An examination showed that his body had been in the water for approximately 30 hours. When experts compared Jeff's handwriting from cards he had previously given to his wife with a note found on the dining table, they confirmed a 100% match. This evidence indicated that he was responsible for the tragic event. It was impossible to completely piece together the events since there were no witnesses. It appears that Jeff coldly murdered his 3 sleeping children and then shot Kim as she tried to flee the house. He likely regretted his actions later and wrote a suicide note, which left him with no way to turn back. Jeff left his family, got into his old car, and drove along a dirt road. After traveling a few hundred meters, he turned into a wheat paddock and headed towards the pond, where the abandoned car. The motive behind the crime was completely unclear. Many local residents held Jeff Hunt in high regard and refused to believe he could be responsible for the violence, despite the clear evidence against him. In the town of Lockhart, he was a respected figure, a farmer, a referee for children's football games, a volunteer, and an active participant in community events. This admiration led to a peculiar reaction among the locals. Some speculated that the weapon may have been in the hands of Kim, who had previously expressed a desire to end her life. Some even called her a witch, claiming that she was responsible for the crimes, accusing her of killing her family due to her mood swings, framing her husband, and then ending her life. This scenario was physically impossible. Jeff was found with a shotgun, while Kim was discovered far from the shell casing where the shots were fired. With the injuries on her body, it was obvious that she couldn't have fired that gun. An examination showed she didn't have the physical ability to shoot a shotgun, as her right side was impaired. Therefore, experts were unanimous that Jeff was the killer. Despite the police conclusively proving that Jeff Hunt had the weapon and was responsible for the deaths of his entire family, some people continued to defend him. Jeff had built such a positive image that many viewed him as a martyr, despite the fact that he had murdered 3 innocent children and his wife, who had already survived a serious car accident. Justifying his actions, regardless of the circumstances, was impossible. The community came together to raise funds and organize a funeral for the victims. Police faced challenges in determining a motive for the crime. Although Jeff was upset that day due to an argument with his son and a conflict with his wife, this was not typical behavior for him. When the Lauren was present, the situation did not escalate. Despite a tense atmosphere in the house, Jeff and Kim generally handled their disputes in a calm and respectful manner, so they maintained their composure. There were no signs indicating the upcoming crisis. The Lauren had never seen Jeff lose his temper, hit his wife and children, or even raise his voice. She never imagined he would resort to violence. As a result, she and others doubted that Jeff could have committed the crime. In contrast, Kim sometimes yelled at her husband and children when she was upset or forgot to take her antidepressants. It was hard to believe that Jeff could have been suffering from deep depression to the point of murdering his family. It would have been difficult to hide such a serious condition from their relatives and the Lauren, who saw them every day. Yet, even she saw no signs that anything tragic was about to happen. Jeff did experience some financial difficulties, but they were manageable and did not stop him from supporting his family or seeking solutions. He was not the type to back down when faced with challenges, especially after carrying the weight of responsibility for many years. Police, gathering evidence over time, determined that the crime was not planned but was instead a spontaneous reaction. This was unusual for Jeff. He had plans for the next day and the upcoming week. Before the Lauren departed, he behaved like a responsible family man and caring father, preparing meals for the children for school and arranging a tennis match with a friend for the weekend. It was revealed that Jeff had been seeing a psychotherapist and had shared that he feared being left alone with the children if Kim were to leave him. Just weeks before her death, Kim told a relative that she was unhappy with Jeff's management of their finances, which often led to money issues. She also admitted that she no longer loved him and felt no attraction, even considering divorce. The tension in their relationship might have intensified, as Kim wanted a divorce and had expressed her desire to separate to Jeff, which could have led to a violent response. The investigation into the incident involved several psychology and psychiatry specialists who provided important insights. One expert, after reviewing the case and speaking with the deceased's relatives, noted that Jeff showed signs of depression, including feelings of sadness and anxiety. Shortly before the shooting, he visited his family looking distressed and remained quiet, suggesting he was hiding something. His family noticed his unusual behavior and tried to understand what was bothering him. In situations like this, it can be challenging to identify the issues, especially since men often avoid discussing their feelings and see asking for help as a sign of weakness. They typically keep their struggles to themselves, which can build up and eventually lead to an emotional outburst, sometimes with tragic consequences. Jeff may have battled his problems for many years while trying to maintain a normal life, hiding his struggles and worsening his situation. Psychologists suggest that he likely wanted to escape due to depression and a deep sense of hopelessness. His use of a firearm to inflict a single fatal injury indicates that he probably did not intend to harm his wife and children. The Lauren reported that Jeff appeared to be under immense pressure from various aspects of his life, including the challenges of caring for his sick wife, Kim, and her changed personality, which may have pushed him to a breaking point. Kim's family also felt that her condition had made life so difficult. Experts believe that Jeff never intended to harm his family. Instead, he was likely overwhelmed by his personal issues and worries, and the stress from the impending divorce may have contributed to his state of mind. However, in a sudden change of thought, he chose to end the lives of everyone around him. He might have convinced himself that as the family's main provider, he was saving them from a future of poverty. In a tragic effort to prevent what he saw as a disastrous outcome, Jeff committed the unimaginable act of killing his family quickly and painlessly, aiming to spare them from suffering. The tragic case of the Hunt family marked one of the bloodiest Father's Days in Australian crime history. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Hannah Hill. Hannah Hill was an 18-year-old girl from Akron, Ohio, born on May 8, 1981. She had a brother named Justin. By the time she turned 18, she had graduated high school and was ready to begin her adult life. Hannah started searching for a job and secured a part-time position as a secretary. After summer, she planned to attend college. With her job, she was able to save money to buy a car. Hannah was beautiful and well-liked in high school. She had many friends and maintained close relationships with them. Hannah had a 19-year-old boyfriend named Brad. They lived together for a while, but their relationship became troubled, leading Hannah to move back in with her parents. A friend later informed Hannah's parents that the couple frequently argued, and these disputes usually ended with Brad hurling insults. When that didn't work, he sometimes resorted to physical force to assert his viewpoint. Despite these issues and her move back home, their romance continued. Friends advised Hannah to end the relationship, believing Brad was not right for her. However, Hannah finds herself attracted to him, as he is her type. On May 19, 1999, Hannah came home from work in the afternoon, as she usually did. After having dinner, taking a bath, and changing into her pajamas, she settled down to watch a movie. Hannah had no plans to go out that evening. However, while she was getting ready for bed, her friend Jennifer called. They talked for a while, and then Hannah unexpectedly decided to change her plans. Around 10 p.m., she changed her clothes and left the house. She told her mother she was going out for business and appeared worried as she hurried away. Her parents didn't have time to ask her questions or understand what was happening. Although they noticed that the phone call seemed to upset her, they weren't overly concerned since Hannah was an adult and often spent nights with her boyfriend or friends. They had no idea that this was the last time they would see their daughter alive. When the parents woke up in the morning, they noticed that their daughter had not returned home at the expected time. This was not unusual, as Hannah sometimes slept over at her boyfriend's house or stayed out late with friends. At first, they were not worried. However, they then received a call from her company, informing them that Hannah had not come to work. This worried them, as it was unusual for her to be absent from work, considering how seriously she took her job. The parents began texting Hannah, but she did not respond. They continued to wait throughout the evening, still unable to find out where she was. They began to worry about her safety. After calling Hannah's friends and boyfriend, but no one had seen her, her parents contacted the police to report her missing. They gave a description of Hannah and mentioned that her car was also missing, suggesting that she had driven away. Despite this, the police did not launch an investigation. They believed that Hannah was just having fun and would come back on her own, so they postponed the case. This time, Hannah's parents sensed something was really wrong. Hannah seemed to have disappeared without a trace and had not contacted anyone. Realizing that the police were not prioritizing the investigation, they decided to take matters into their own hands. First, they contacted Hannah's boyfriend, but he, like everyone else, had no idea where she was. He said he had tried to contact her, but she had not responded to his messages. Next, the parents started asking Hannah's friends for information. They spoke to Denny, but he also said he had been unable to contact Hannah despite repeated attempts. 2 days later, passers-by reported the abandoned car they had found on the side of the road to the police. The car was found just a few miles from Hannah's home. Witnesses noted that the car looked suspicious because it appeared to have been unused for more than 2 days. Unfortunately, the police did not take Hannah's parents' report seriously. As a result, other police were unaware that the car's owner was missing and were unable to connect the 1996 Geo Prism Hannah was driving to the witness reports. As a result, one of the patrol officers was dispatched to the location to simply write a parking ticket, and he took no further action. The next day, Brad contacted the police station where the report was filed. He was angry that the police had not begun an investigation or search for Hannah. He insisted that they take immediate action. After speaking with him, the police reviewed Hannah's parents' missing person report and decided it was time to start looking for her. They also noticed scratches on her boyfriend's body and asked about them. He explained that they had argued shortly before her disappearance due to his infidelity, and during the fight Hannah had attacked him. Although the injuries did not appear to be serious, they raised some suspicions among the police. However, no evidence linking him to Hannah's disappearance was found, and he left the police station without incident. His visit helped to advance the investigation, and details of Hannah's disappearance were shared with the media. Police hope to find witnesses who can provide further information. Some information about Hannah has emerged. Someone contacted the police after seeing Hannah's car, which was the same car that a patrol officer had been sent to ticket a short time earlier. By May 26, the car had been parked on the side of the road for a week without anyone coming to pick it up or reporting it. That day, several officers were sent to check on the car. They arrived at the location at 7:30 a.m. The car showed no signs of forced entry or theft. When the officers opened the trunk, they made a horrifying discovery. Hannah's body was inside. This was reported on the news the same day. The body was in a state of decomposition after being in the trunk of a car for a week in hot weather. Hannah was found with her bra pulled around her neck. Her knees were bent and spread, leading police to suspect a sexual motive behind the crime. Hannah had bruises, scratches, and cuts, indicating that she had fought back. Her pager and car keys were found next to her body. Many local residents were outraged that the police did not take her parents' missing person report seriously and did not list her and her car as missing. Hannah remained in the trunk of her car for a week. When a patrol officer arrived to issue a ticket, he did not inspect the car or contact the owner. Many speculate that Hannah may have been alive and the first police arrived and may have been rescued. Even if she had not, the investigation would have begun much sooner, and the passing of a week would have risked losing crucial evidence. Forensic experts conducted an autopsy and determined that Hannah's cause of death was strangulation. They discovered that she had been gagged, found a white substance on her lips, and noted a bite mark on one of her hands. Her body was covered in bruises and abrasions. Additionally, it was established that she had had an intimate encounter with a man shortly before her death. Forensic experts suspected that she may have been raped based on the positioning of her body, her torn clothes, and the nature of her injuries. It appeared that she had resisted and was strangled before being placed in the trunk. A toxicology report revealed a small amount of alcohol in her system, despite her leaving home completely sober, suggesting she had consumed alcohol elsewhere. Police initially considered Brad the prime suspect because intimate partners were often involved in such cases. When he arrived at the station, they noticed suspicious scratches on his body. Hannah's parents also suspect him of being involved in her disappearance, as they never liked him. During a search of Hannah's home, police found her diary, which detailed her relationship with her boyfriend. They learned that he had been both emotionally and physically abusive towards her, which was confirmed by her diary entries and several witness accounts. The police brought Brad in for questioning. He claimed to have an alibi for the night of her disappearance, stating he was at a party with friends, where they watched TV and drank. Although his alibi was shaky, he passed a polygraph test. Police found him to be genuinely upset and concerned about Hannah, and his body language suggested he was being truthful. The police obtained a recording of Hannah's phone calls that night. They discovered that she had made 4 calls from her home phone. 1 call was to her friend, 2 calls were to Brad, and another call was to a guy named Denny Ross, who was a friend of her boyfriend, Brad. The police then checked Hannah's pager. They discovered that on the night of her disappearance, she had sent several messages to her friends, including Denny, who was mentioned in her diary. Recently, they had become closer and often talked to each other. However, Hannah's friend insisted that their relationship was not romantic. They became friends mainly because Denny's house was a popular spot for parties, as he lived alone without his parents, allowing people to enjoy themselves freely. Their interactions were purely friendly. The police began to view Denny, Hannah's friend, as a suspect in her murder since he might have been the last person to see her alive. Friends described Denny as potentially aggressive, stating that he always got what he wanted and could behave rudely. Police discovered that Denny had a legal problem 2 weeks before Hannah went missing. He had been arrested while selling illegal drugs for $500. Denny quickly admitted to drug possession and trafficking charges. On May 26, he received a suspended sentence for his drug trafficking charges. Police went to Denny's home to question him and investigate his possible involvement in Hannah's disappearance and murder. When police arrived, they found Denny wearing a cast on his arm. Surprisingly, he was on the phone and told police he was talking to a lawyer. Denny claimed that he had injured his hand in a fight a few weeks earlier. When speaking to the police, he mentioned that Hannah had called him around 11 p.m. on the night she went missing. He also provided a significant amount of new information that he had not disclosed in previous interviews related to the case. The police found this disturbing, so he was taken to the police station for further questioning. At the station, Denny said that night, he and Hannah talked for a long time about her boyfriend. She arrived feeling upset and unhappy in her relationship, expressing her frustrations and appearing ready to end it. After their lengthy conversation, they shared a kiss, and then she left around 1:30 a.m. He claimed he never saw her again and insisted she was completely sober. They didn't drink that night. Denny believed Hannah had feelings for him, and he was also in love with her. It was unusual for a man who was in love and possibly Hannah's new boyfriend to choose not to help find her when he had the chance. This raised suspicions, prompting police to quickly obtain a search warrant for Denny's home. On the morning of May 27th, 15 police officers arrived at Denny's second-floor apartment. They found several small bloodstains that he could not explain, which was very concerning. Blood samples were sent to the lab for analysis. Outside, under a bush, they found a trash bag. One officer noticed what appeared to be a woman's shoe inside. When the officers opened the bag, they found women's pants, underwear, and shoes, all of which were stained with blood. It was confirmed that these items belonged to Hannah and had her blood on them. One of the police officers reported hearing a noise outside the window while he was going up the stairs. At that moment, Denny reportedly threw the evidence bag onto the street. Denny was later arrested. However, he maintained his innocence. His father hired the city's top lawyers to defend him in court. The defense team carefully reviewed the case file and the evidence gathered during the investigation. By this time, a collection of evidence had been compiled. Along with Hannah's DNA, traces of Denny were found in a garbage bag. The white residue on the Hannah's lips contained his DNA, and a bite mark on her neck matched Denny's dental impressions. Male bodily fluid was found on the Hannah, but after being there for a week, it was no longer suitable for analysis. Police believed that Denny not only killed her but also attacked, forced, and raped her. The defense argued that Denny's DNA found on Hannah's lips and the bite mark did not prove that he had killed her. It only showed that they had intimate contact. Furthermore, the defense emphasized that the police mishandled the initial investigation, leading to a lengthy delay in locating Hannah's disappearance. Instead of finding her within hours of her parents reporting the incident, it took police a week. To cover up their negligence, the attorneys argued the police tried to charge the first person they encountered. The attorneys noted that the police did not interview enough potential witnesses and did not look for other suspects, focusing only on Denny. The attorneys said that several bags of fast food were found in Hannah's car and that Hannah had stopped at a fast food restaurant shortly before her death. However, the police did not go to the restaurant to interview the staff. It is possible that Hannah encountered a dangerous person during her trip to the restaurant, leading to the attack and subsequent death. The defense argued that the blood found at Denny's house did not belong to Hannah, and that it was unreasonable to think that Denny with a broken arm could have raped and murdered a girl in his own home, since he could not have overpowered her with such an injury, especially given the complete lack of DNA evidence linking him to the victim's car and the evidence bag. The attorney argued that someone had intentionally framed Denny. The police have a different opinion. When police arrived at Denny's home, he allegedly threw an evidence bag out the window. However, Denny maintained that he did not throw the bag out the window. There were no fingerprints on the bag, and it did not match any trash bags he had at home. Police also did not test the temperature of the bag, making it impossible to determine whether it had been outside for minutes or hours. Meanwhile, Hannah Hill was buried in a family plot in Kentucky the day after her 19th birthday. The trial of Denny Ross began on October 17, 2000. Hannah's friend, Jennifer Edwards, was the first to testify. She described Denny as an unreliable person who could be aggressive and physically violent. Jennifer said that after Hannah disappeared, she visited him. But he claimed that he had not seen Hannah before she disappeared, although in fact, they had met, which meant that he was hiding something. The lawyers argued that the bag had been placed under Denny's house by the real criminal. They stressed that Denny had no motive to kill Hannah. They were not romantically involved, they simply liked each other and had a future together. So why would he kill Hannah, the person he loved, and give up the chance to be with her? The defense argued that the Brad, who was extremely jealous and had previously been violent towards Hannah, might have been driven by jealousy towards Denny, leading him to kill his partner. The defense also pointed to scratches on the Brad's body that he had when he arrived at the police station. He admitted that Hannah had caused the scratches but claimed they occurred before her disappearance. However, this could have been a lie. The police's failure to investigate his statement thoroughly and the prolonged search for Hannah's body could result in significant penalties for police due to negligence. Thus, the defense believed the police were eager to close the case quickly to avoid facing serious consequences. Forensic experts had compelling evidence that the girl had been intimate before her death but were unable to prove this due to the state of decomposition. By the time the body was discovered, it was already quite badly decomposed, making it difficult to draw conclusions. However, the prosecution claimed that the nature of the injuries found on Hannah's body, her position, and the state of her clothing suggested that she had been brutally raped. A chemist analyzed the white substance found on Hannah's lips. The results showed that it was a common compound that could not be definitively linked to Denny. The expert noted that the same material was used in many different products. Therefore, it was impossible to determine with certainty that Denny was involved in the white substance on her lips. Meanwhile, the defense team has been working hard to prevent rape charges against Denny Ross, because under state law, he could face the death penalty for both murder and rape. At the time, the jury found the evidence bag near Denny's house suspicious. They struggled to understand why Denny would have kept the victim's clothes there for a week. Furthermore, if someone threw the open bag from the second floor, there was a chance that the contents would fall out. Instead, the bag lay neatly, as if it had been placed there intentionally to attract the attention of the police. As the jury deliberated their verdict, they discovered that a juror had reviewed documents related to Hannah prior to the trial. By law, jurors are not allowed to have third-party information in advance because it could create bias and influence their opinions. As a result, the trial was deemed invalid and a new jury had to be held. However, because the documents declaring Denny Ross innocent of rape had already been signed, he could not be indicted again for the same crime. As a result, the jury was discharged and Denny was granted a temporary release. After a year of probation, the main suspect was sentenced to 25 years in prison after he attacked with a knife and raped another girl, 32-year-old Jennifer. He beat her severely, breaking her collarbone and jaw. The girl pretended to be dead so that he would leave. She immediately contacted the police afterward. It is unknown whether he would have killed her if he had noticed signs of life. Investigators thought that she was very lucky, as Jennifer bore a strong resemblance to the deceased Hannah. Following this, the discussion of the murder of Hannah Hill resumed with renewed vigor. Despite the fact that a man could not be tried twice for the same crime of rape, he could be tried for murder. Therefore, a new trial took place. The only thing he could not be sentenced to was death in court. In addition to the old evidence and witnesses, new ones were discussed. In particular, ex-girlfriends of Dennis spoke, claiming that he inclined them to intimate relations and used violence. Mutual friends of Dennis and Hannah testified that the defendant was obsessed with the deceased and, after the discovery of her body, he boasted that he had slept with her and even strangled her. During the retrial, the prosecution's case was much stronger. DNA testing had advanced significantly since Hannah's death, allowing experts to detect Dennis's DNA in drops of blood on Hannah's trousers and underwear. Dennis's DNA was also found under the fingernails on Hannah's left hand and on the deceased's t-shirt. A witness was found who saw Dennis throwing something out of the window of his apartment. When police discovered the bag with the victim's clothes outside, this witness also stated that she heard screams from Dennis Ross's house on the night of her disappearance and was sure that he was the one who raped and killed the girl. The witness even listened to a phone conversation in which they were discussing Hannah. The state appealed and that decision was overturned. Denny could have faced a retrial and he returned to court in 2012 to face murder charges. The trial also mentioned his attack on Jennifer, who survived and survived. Jennifer said that they met at a bar, had a few beers, and she invited him to her house with friends. However, when they returned, Jennifer began to feel unwell and asked everyone to leave. Everyone left, except Denny, who went upstairs to use the bathroom. After a while, Jennifer went looking for Denny. When she found him, he attacked her, stabbed her in the face and dragged her down the stairs. He hit her with such force that he broke her jaw and collarbone. Denny threatened to kill her children if she tried to escape. When Jennifer tried to run away, he choked her from behind. He raped her while holding a knife and continued to choke her. Jennifer was shocked when she couldn't breathe and passed out several times. She pretended to be dead, at which point Denny released her but showed no concern for her condition. Denny eventually kicked her several times, but she remained still, and he eventually left. She then called 911. Jennifer spent 6 months recovering in the hospital. In response to his testimony, Denny claimed it was a lie and insisted that they had consensual sex. When asked about Jennifer's injuries, he suggested that she must have fallen or been attacked by someone else, denying any involvement. Denny's father, Alan, defended his son during the trial. He explained that he was at Denny's house when Hannah arrived that night. She was crying and depressed after an argument with her boyfriend. Hannah needed Denny's support, and they talked to each other instead of going out. By the end of the night, she had made it out safely. Alan believed that Hannah may have been attacked outside, but he insisted that it was not his son who hurt her. The prosecution presented a different version of events, claiming that Hannah, upset over an argument with her boyfriend, went to Denny for comfort because she trusted him. They alleged that Denny took advantage of her vulnerability and began harassing her, but she refused. The prosecution raised doubts about Alan's presence in the house, noting that Denny lived alone. With the new evidence, the jury concluded that there was enough evidence to convict him. As a result, Denny Ross was convicted of murder and tampering with evidence. 13 years after Hannah Hill's death, Denny was sentenced to life in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 19 years, when he will be 67 years old.